We know that a lot of schools in Merri-bek really struggle with congestion. We also know that a lot of families want to walk or ride to school, but the dangerous zones outside the school gates often push people away from making that choice. So it's really about just creating a really hyper-safe, sustainable, healthy space in front of schools.
It's been absolutely brilliant. The kids are loving coming to school on Tuesdays. There's a real vibe and a sense of, joy when we start the day together. Lots of families are starting to come back. Our student attendance has increased on the days that we have open streets, and also we have less lateness as well. So it's just been brilliant all around.
We don't normally walk, we normally drive, so it's a really good incentive to get parents that don't normally do it, doing it. Once we're out and walking, they really enjoy it. It's so much safer. The kids love coming in here, playing, drawing with chalk.
This has been probably the highlight. Parents are saying, wow, can we do this more often, which has been fantastic. To see the joy on the kids' faces and to hear them saying, wanting to ride their bikes and wanting to have a play on the street's been amazing.
We have a huge percentage of our students riding to school. You can just see how successful it is. We've got kids riding, parents coming along, just really enjoying themselves. And it's changed my thinking. For someone who drove to work, bought my own bike and riding to work each day, it's amazing.
It's a fun experience. I normally walk, but today everyone's doing it, so I might as well join in.
It's also an initiative that residents and the local community can take part in. We want to see people coming out, having a coffee, we want to see people talking to their neighbours, and it's been really fantastic to partner with Bicycle Network and the schools to run these initiatives and really see, some healthy, happy street space.
Being part of Open Streets has been really exciting. We're interested in making people view their neighbourhood streets in a different way, being spaces for everyone and multi-use spaces, not just for throughways for cars.
And just listen to all this noise. It's great having everyone have so much fun around you and just being active. No, we're really stoked. We should happen every day.
This is very attractive for parents and kids to spend together. I think it's encouraging people to ride to the school.
I think it's definitely a good idea to get people active and getting people involved with the community. Because of this, it got a lot of me and my friends to ride to school every day. I get to see all my friends and talk to new people.
My name is Angelica Panopoulos and I'm your new Mayor of Merri-bek City Council. I'm a lifelong local. I've just finished uni, so I'm a law grad. I'm an activist and I've been a councillor for 2 years now. So today we are along the Moonee Ponds Creek in Glenroy, and this is somewhere where I've come ever since I was a little kid with my family, with my dog, down for walks by the creek and played in the park, and I've got lots of fun memories here. There's a lot to love about Merri-bek. I think the fact that we've got such a diverse, eclectic mix of people here who call this area home and who all care about this area is something that really sets us apart and makes me quite proud to be from this area. So my spare time's been a bit limited up until now. I do like just to see my friends, to relax, read a good book, and to get out and to see new things. It's hard to choose just one or two of my favourite places in Merri-bek. I think most important is wherever I am with my friends or my family and having a good time, that's where I like to be. Also had some great times just sitting in Coburg Mall and having chats with people, and so really anywhere where there's a bit of energy and a bit of life happening, I think it's quite fun to be around there. There's a few big challenges facing Merri-bek right now. In terms of broader challenges, I think we need to work together to bring the community with us on particular journeys, say to reconciliation, to other forms of equality that we need to have happen in our community. As the Mayor of Merri-bek, I hope to achieve a few things. I hope that first and foremost, we can make council seem a lot more accessible to people, and as though this isn't something that you have to wait until you're much older to do or until you've got X amount of years of work experience. I think making it quite clear to people that this is council, it belongs to you as much as it belongs to me, and so we should all get involved, and I really want that to be the overriding, message throughout this mayoral year.
Well, they did putting the solar panel on top of the roof. It looks beautiful, and what is important is knowing the help that it could for us for our energy sufficiency. I saw everyone here in our neighborhood is putting solar, so I said to myself, I will think about it. I will not lose anything, so I choose to put it, and that makes a difference. It helps us when we receive the bill now. We saw the difference from the usual amount that we paid, so it went down, and I think it will help us. The money that is being not paid before, we can use it with other things, and I think the overall help of that solar being installed in our roof is really to save some money and also helping the climate change. And it will really make a difference for the earth, in a way, it is helping us. So I will recommend, don't hesitate to put this solar panel in your roof. It is a big difference to have it.
Pedestrians and bike riders, including a large and growing number of Coburg High School students, are at risk every day on and around Coburg's Bell Street Bridge at the Nicholson and Elizabeth Street intersection.
The area is notorious for traffic accidents. Recently, a Coburg High School student was injured by a car while walking in the area.
Footpaths on the Bell Street Bridge are significantly narrower than other bridges in the area, yet the Bell Street Bridge carries more traffic than almost any other road in Merri-bek, 47,000 vehicles a day. The narrow paths, along with high volumes of cars, trucks and buses, pose an unacceptable risk to safety and accessibility in our community.
We know that more than 1,000 people walk and wheel across the bridge on weekdays, just in the morning and afternoon peak periods. Even more use the bridge during the day and on weekends. We also know that students are worried about walking and cycling across the bridge. And for many, it's their only way to and from school, or to access the after-school activities and shops.
I've heard lots of horror stories about near misses and things like that, but most of what I see is just less than a metre in between the pedestrians and the cars, and 3 lanes of traffic going as fast as they want.
This council meeting is being recorded and web streamed live to council's website and Facebook, and the recording will also be available as video on demand. Attendees are advised that they'll be recorded during the meeting. A reminder that as councillors, we'll act in accordance with the Councillor Code of Conduct, which will support the principles of leadership and good governance that secures public confidence in the office of councillor. I also want to start off this meeting by saying that Merri-bek Council is an inclusive place, and we want to make sure that everybody in our community can be safe and welcomed. And this is something that we really pride ourselves on. So this is to say that we won't be tolerating offensive comments, so this will act as, I guess, a formal warning. If there are any offensive, threatening, abusive comments made by people in the gallery, I'll ask that you leave the council meeting, or security may also request that you leave the meeting. In the event of an emergency or a disruption, we may be required to take action to ensure the safety of attendees. For members of the gallery and councillors attending in person, please follow the directions issued by council staff and security officers. Thanks in advance for your understanding and your cooperation. So in terms of councillors and officers in attendance for tonight, I would like to introduce some of our councillors here. We've got Councillor Helen Davidson, our Deputy Mayor. Good evening. Councillor James Conlon.
Hi everyone.
Councillor Adam Pulford.
Hi everyone.
Councillor Monica Hart.
Councillor Oscar Yildiz. And we've got 2 councillors who have been approved to attend tonight's meeting online, and that's Councillor Mark Riley
Good evening.
and Councillor Helen Pavlidis. Great. And I'll also introduce the Chief Executive Officer, Kathy Henderson, to my right, and the senior management team around us. Are there any apologies from councillors tonight? I know we... Oh.
I think we can note that Councillor Sue Bolton may be arriving a little late.
Yeah. Great. Yes, I've got that too. Any other apologies? No? All right. I do have one request for a leave of absence for this evening. And so Councillor Anna-Olivia Carley-Hannon has requested a leave of absence from the 16th to the 27th of October inclusive. Councillors, could I please have a motion for this? Okay, Councillor Davidson to move, Councillor Conlon to second. All those in favour? All those against? That has been carried. And I will welcome Councillor Lambros Tapanos, who has just joined us this evening, and his seat is on my left. So we'll now move on to disclosures of conflicts of interest. Councillors, are there any conflicts of interest to disclose or to declare? Yep. If not, then we'll move on to the next item. And so that is usually item number 3, which is the confirmation of minutes of our previous meeting. Just given the rescission motion that we've got at item 9.1, I'm going to move that we consider this item 3, confirmation of minutes, immediately after we deal with all of the rest of the items for this evening, and that way it just makes it a bit easier procedure-wise to have dealt with the rescission motion and then confirming the minutes depending on the result of that motion. Is that in agreement with councillors? Great. Thanks, councillors. Okay, so now we'll move on to item 4, which is the acknowledgements and other matters. Provision of up to 10 minutes is provided for councillors to acknowledge and recognise the achievements of local individuals and organisations and to raise matters considered important to council that are not already listed in the meeting agenda. So, councillors, are there any acknowledgements or other matters that any of you wish to raise? Councillor Hart, just unmute yourself. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, the matter I wanted to raise was an acknowledgement that it's actually Seniors Month in Victoria. And I just wanted to acknowledge that I'd attended 3 events for that. The first one was a Healthy Ageing Expo, which was held down at the Brunswick Town Hall on October the 6th. Really well attended. There was probably over 300 people showed up for that. It was,
you could just speak a bit closer to the mic so that way everyone can hear you.
Sorry. Yeah. It was a social event, but there were lots of stalls there. There was food there for people. And I really want to say a credit to the Merri-bek staff, who really only in April began to think about even organising for that event. So a tremendous effort that they were able to pull that together, and that was on top of their own workload. The other part of Seniors Week was the Senior Awards, which were held at Government House. I attended that also with about 8 other seniors from Merri-bek, and it was a wonderful occasion to hear the Governor, Margaret Gardner, talk about their contribution, the wisdom and the experience of elders in our community. Very inspiring. The winner of the awards, who was a Senior of the Year, was from a senior, Victorian senior, is from a Warrnambool man, but who talked about the fact that you don't retire from, you retire to, which is very inspirational. And today there was another event down at Brunswick Town Hall where they had I'm just trying to think of the words for it, but it's the
Antique Roadshow.
Yep. Antique Roadshow was last time, first Antique Roadshow I've been to. But what I really want to acknowledge is not just the contribution of seniors, but really it showed for me the contribution that council and our staff make to the lives and the well-being of older residents in our community, both in a caring way and in a social way, and the linking between the two. And I think it said to me that really the only organisation that does it well, and we're pivoted to do it well, is local government. and really to send, I think, a congratulations to all staff, not what they do just for this month, but what they do for the whole year. Those who work in care for our aged people, our older people, and care for us. So, yeah,
excellent.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Are there any other councillors who have things that they'd like to raise? Councillor Pulford?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to acknowledge that the referendum for the voice to Parliament for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples failed over the weekend. Wanted to acknowledge that the federal electorate that most of our city is in had almost a 64% yes vote. I supported the yes campaign, and I know a lot of members of our community did, and I know that the result is really hurtful for a lot of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in our community, but also across the country. I wanted to acknowledge that some of the Aboriginal campaigners said that they're going to have a week of silence, and they requested that flags be flown at half-mast for the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags, and want to thank Merri-bek Council for taking that up and doing that. And also just for community members who are feeling, I guess, a lack of hope around justice for First Nations peoples. I think while the referendum loss means that we're not taking that step forward, here in Victoria, all three elements of the Uluru Statement of the Heart are being advanced. There's a voice in the First Peoples Assembly of Victoria, and I'm lucky enough to work with them in my other job. There's the truth-telling, Australia's first formal truth-telling process being run by Yuruk Justice Commission, and the First Peoples Assembly, the voice, is leading the journey to treaty for Victoria, and Victoria is by far the most advanced on that journey. So there's hope to be found at the state level. There's hope to be found from Mob here in Victoria, who are leading the way, but wanted to acknowledge the result is a heavy time for not just Mob, but particularly Mob, but also a bunch of members in our community.
Great, thanks, Councillor Pulford. I too just want to provide a report back on a conference that the Deputy Mayor and I attended last week, and that was the Asia Pacific City Summit and the Mayor's Forum. And so I was so privileged to be able to speak on two panels at the summit. The first was at a Young Leaders Forum with the Mayor of Merri-bek Council and the Deputy Mayor of the Huon Valley, and the second was presenting about our name change, our work on voice, treaty and truth, and other opportunities in that space around Bullet Maroop and that site in Glenroy. So it was really great. I think I speak for both Councillor Davidson and I, to be able to hear from experts in local government and in planning, and really how we create and build our cities and how we can make sure that they're sustainable, people can be well connected, and that we can create projects and services, I guess, that leave a positive and lasting legacy for the community. So I thought I'd just report back on the conference that we both attended. Are there, I see Councillor Riley, you've got your hand up.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I just want to say that I'm joining the meeting tonight from Ailayu in Timor-Leste. I arrived here on Sunday with the Mayor of Hume, Councillor Joseph Howell, and Councillor Naim Kirk, and we're travelling with the Friends of Ailayu officer at Merri-bek and Hume. And this is my second trip here, but it's just to acknowledge the work that's going on here that the Friends of Ailayu facilitate and support. We don't decide what they do. It's guided by the administration, the municipal administration here, and all the people on the ground in Ailayu. So it's a great model. There's a great deal of debt of gratitude from the community here, and we're learning a good deal. Just to say that this is the youngest country in Southeast Asia and one of the poorest on the planet. So it's quite a privilege to be here, at least again, and hoping to bring back some news and reports to other councillors and the community about the good work that Merri-bek and Hume have been doing. So it's great to be able to join online. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Riley. I'll just see if there are any other acknowledgements or report backs for this month's meeting. If not, we'll move on to petitions then, and that's item 5. So there are no petitions listed in the agenda tonight. So I'll just see if there's any petitions to be tabled by councillors on behalf of residents. If not, we'll move on to item 6, which is questions of council and community statements. So the time provided for questions and statements is 30 minutes, and this time can only be extended by another 30 minutes by resolution of Council. If we do not have the time to answer your question, it will be taken on notice and responded to in writing. Priority will be given to questions and statements that relate to matters listed in the agenda. If time allows, questions about items other than those listed in the agenda will be considered. A maximum of 2 questions or statements in any combination is allowed per person, and questions or statements that relate to a matter listed in the agenda will be dealt with first. If you've registered to ask a question, when I invite you, you or your representative must state your name and suburb and then ask your question with preamble or background for up to 3 minutes. If you've registered to make a statement, when I invite you, you or your representative must state your name and your suburb and then make your statement without taking longer than the 3 minutes. If you've submitted a second question or indicated that you've got a second statement, it may, at my discretion, be deferred until all other people who have submitted questions have asked their first one, or it might not be asked if time does not permit. A maximum of 3 questions will be heard on any one subject, and then we'll move on to the next topic. If time allows, we'll return to the previous topic. So either I will answer the question on behalf of Council, or I'll invite another councillor to answer. Alternatively, I'll ask the Chief Executive Officer to provide a response or refer it to another one of our council officers. There'll be no response or discussion in relation to community statements. As detailed in the governance rules, questions or statements may be disallowed if they are defamatory, indecent, abusive, offensive, irrelevant, trivial, or objectionable in language or substance. If a response to your question is provided at tonight's meeting, there'll be no further formal response, but Council will action any commitments made in answering the question. So with that, we will commence question time at 7:16 this evening. And first up is report 7.1, making it safer and easier to walk and ride in Merri-bek, response to notice of motion. And for that, we've got Lisa O'Halloran from the Merri-bek Bicycle Users Group, who is here in person with a statement.
Thank you. Thank you very much, councillors. Merri-bek Bug is supportive of the comprehensive report that officers have provided in response to Councillor Pulford's June notice of motion about opportunities to accelerate the rollout of active transport infrastructure by bringing forward active transport projects. Merri-bek residents have consistently shown a high level of interest over many years in opportunities to switch to active transport, and particularly in projects that will provide dedicated cycling spaces separated from traffic. This has been most recently demonstrated with the sheer volume of submissions to the budget process requesting that Council allocate more funding for bike infrastructure and, in particular, dedicated bike lanes. Council's social research conducted in early 2023 that found that significant numbers of residents across Merri-bek were interested in using a bicycle for some local trips, especially amongst women. And Council's 2022 consultation on the 10-year capital works programs for walking and cycling, which received 292 survey responses with 932 pinned comments on the interactive map from 289 people that identified specific improvements that they wanted in their communities. This high level of demand from residents, coupled with Merri-bek's own aspirations towards reducing carbon emissions, addressing the climate emergency, reducing congestion, and making it healthier, safer, and easier to travel around Merri-bek, calls for an accelerated approach to building the sort of city that gives all residents a real choice in how we move around our city. We believe that option 2, recommended by officers, provides a good plan for moving forward with additional pedestrian and cycling projects that will make a real difference. However, it only requires a modest increase in budget, and we thank officers for all their work on this. The projects chosen all fit well into long-term strategies for improving walking and cycling in Merri-bek and are strongly supported by residents. Officers, however, have failed to address the second part of Councillor Pulford's nom with respect to indexing the $10 per capita spend for active travel projects. We think having this relatively small budget index is really important. Since Council voted in June 2019 that the budget should have a $10 per resident max minimum, costs have increased by 15.5%. The transport budget is now a smaller proportion of the entire Council budget than it was in 2019, at a time when there is an urgent need for mode switch to address transport emissions, health, congestion, cost of living and other issues. It is more pressing than ever. This is why we believe that the $10 per capita for walking and cycling projects should be indexed to inflation. Doing so would mean that a small but important budget would be better able to keep up not only with the total council budget, but with the important and major work both residents and council's own policies expect of it. So in summary, our ask is this. We are asking councillors to vote for option 2, as presented by officers, but to also ensure that this budget is indexed in line with inflation from 2019.
Thank you, Lisa. So next up we have report 7.2 to Carl Street bike lanes. And I believe that we've got Maria Giordano, the principal of Merri-bek Primary School, who's dropped out. Okay, we might try to bring her back in. Sorry, Lisa. If you're able to come back in and give your statement now, that would be great, and we'll try and get Maria back online. Thanks for that.
This is like an encore when people come out at a gig, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you very much, councillors, again. From the first time council suggested protected bike lanes under Carl Street, the project has had incredible community support. This reflects the ongoing and consistent support for safer cycling routes across Merri-bek that is regularly voiced by residents. Referenced it earlier, so I won't take you through it again, but residents in Merri-bek overwhelmingly support measures for better quality outcomes for riders on bikes. The consultation process for this project also reveals significant levels of support. The location of Dakar with access for families riding to daycare centres and primary schools and intersections with the activity centre on Sydney Road are just some of the reasons why this project has become so important to the community. Sorry. We understand the challenges that officers have detailed with the original proposal and why the protected bike lanes proposed can't be built as they were envisaged. The current proposal, however, does not meet the expectations of the community. Officers have referenced Napier Street and Fitzroy, but it omits some of the most significant factors on Napier Street, and that is the multiple and significant modal filters that restrict through traffic by motor vehicles. Without these, Napier Street would not be the success it is, and DeCarl Street will not provide the traffic calming it needs to work as officers hope. We believe that this proposal needs to be revisited, and we urge councillors to ask officers to do that. Protected bike lanes may be able to be incorporated with a redesign of the street. That includes removing some of the parking, but modal filters and other features of streets like Napier and Canning Street that we all enjoy riding down on a regular basis may also provide better traffic calming and wider benefit. Councillors have already voted on this proposal in the past, and that vote was for design that provided a route that is suitable for use from riders from 8 to 80. The current proposal doesn't do that and needs to be revisited in that context. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Now we'll see if we've got Maria. Great, Maria is back online and she's the principal of Merri-bek Primary School with a statement. Hi, Maria, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Sorry about that. I've been trying to get on, but it's been a bit difficult. I think it's because of where I'm situated, so sorry about that.
All good, all good. You've got 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm principal of Merri-bek Primary School. I actually ride my bike to school, and we have well over 40% of our students ride their bikes to school. We've extended our bike shed to allow for room for students to ride their bikes. We've got strong community support. A lot of our parents also ride their bikes to school and have their kids on the back of the bike. So allowing for, the streets located on the paths on Blair Street to allow for the students to ride their bike would be a huge advantage and safety concerns. As I ride my bike and I come up Munro Street, cross over Sydney Road and then use Blair Street, and there are no bike paths there at the moment. We've seen a huge increase also with our families. Over 20% of our children ride their bikes to school, and we are a ride and stride school. And when we surveyed our community, the respondents felt that Blair Street was safe to walk or ride on, but given when we had the ride and stride, when we closed the streets, but that was not the same case, when the streets weren't closed around along Blair Street and DeKalb Street. And we've really seen a huge increase. On average, 65.4% of our students use some form of active transport to school, but we saw a huge increase in students walking and riding when we actually closed the streets. So for us as a safety concern, I'm really supportive and talking on behalf of our parent community, in favour of ensuring that we have those safe separated bike lanes on Blair Street. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us for that statement. So next up, we've got a question on report 7.3, which is 2022 to 2023's Merri-bek City Council annual report. And for that, we've got Marion Atwater here in person.
Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Marion Atwater and I'm from Pascoe Vale. On page 14 of the annual report, at item 7.3 of the agenda, in the section about achievements related to the council plan, it says that we began our review and update of our integrated transport strategy. This included completing social policy research fieldwork, which helped inform the discussion paper for the strategy. We began planning for the review of our parking management policy. This will include community engagement and a precinct-by-precinct approach. That community engagement just never happens. But anyway, so the council resolutions to review the parking management policy and to review the integrated transport strategy were made at the 14th of April 2021 council meeting. That was more than 2.5 years ago. Whereas the discussion paper in the Conversations Merri-bek page for the review of the integrated transport strategy this year actually says that the council is not reviewing the integrated transport strategy, but is instead writing a new transport strategy. Those two things are completely different. So my question is, was there a notice of rescission on that 14th of April 2021 decision to review the integrated transport strategy? And if yes, at which council meeting did this happen, please?
Great. Thanks, Marion. I'll pass over to Sue, the Director of Business Transformation, to answer that.
Through the Mayor, thank you, Marion, for your question. Your question suggests that revising a strategy and developing a new strategy are very different things, but they are all different ways of describing reviewing a strategy. So there was no rescission motion lodged or required. It's now 4 years since the original integrated transport strategy was adopted, and the public consultation process so far hasn't included explanations of how the context has changed since then, including that a majority of the actions in the 2019 strategy have been completed. Thanks, Marion.
Thank you.
Great. Feel free to stay in because your statement is up next.
Okay.
And that's on report 7.14, the adoption of Council's governance rules 2023.
Thank you. So, in tonight's agenda, there is adoption of revised governance rules. And so I'd like to offer my opinion that this item should be deferred to the next council meeting in November so that councillors can spend adequate time considering the proposed changes to the governance rules. And I would point out that tonight's agenda is something like 746 pages with 21 reports and 3 other items. So firstly, I'll point out 2 reasons why. Firstly, the proposed changes to public question time will not overcome the issue of questions and statements being taken on notice prior to a meeting. The Local Government Victoria Model Governance Rules of 2020 actually had sub-rules stating that questions and statements should be submitted to the CEO and that the CEO would decide on questions and statements. So I think councillors should look at the model governance rules themselves and give some consideration to how to improve this section. And secondly, I would like to point out that the annual report for 2022 to 23, which is in tonight's agenda, it's item 7.3, it still has a section about local laws, and it has a section about the council's existing meeting procedure local law of 2018, which is on page 143 of the annual report. This year, the annual report says that, quote, While the majority of the Council's existing meeting procedure local law has been replaced by the Council's governance rules, the remaining provisions of the local law persist for the specific purposes of governing the use of the Council's common seal and establishing penalties for infringements. And each year in the annual report, it says something different about why the meeting procedure local law still exists. Whereas in reality, no sections of the local law have been officially revoked by resolution of councillors. By contrast, when the administrators at Casey Council adopted their governance rules in August of 2020, part of that resolution was to cease enforcing various sections of their meeting procedure local law and use of the common seal. Darebin Council made a similar decision about their meeting procedure and common seal local law in July 2020. And the revised governance rules in tonight's agenda still has a Chapter 8 on the use of the common seal, which means that it duplicates the Council's local law for meeting procedures. There are many more issues that I could raise about the governance rules, but these are just two examples of why I think the item should be deferred to allow further consideration. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Marion. So next up we have a question on notice of rescission, which is item 9.1, regarding last month's meeting on the conclusion of the Kent Road separated bike lane trial and next steps for Coburg to Glenroy bike route. So first up, we've got Peter Jeffs with a question, and he is here in person.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, councillors and council officers. My name is Peter Jeffs and I live in Glenroy. Dear Madam Mayor, you have before you this evening a notice of rescission in relation to a motion passed at Council's last meeting to remove the bike lanes on Kent Road, Pascoe Vale. My question is one which I believe can be answered here tonight with a simple yes or no. With regard to the removal of the bike lanes along Kent Road, Pascoe Vale, is it not true that Council's own expert in this area of traffic management, along with the wishes of the majority of the community, by way of petitions and emails to Council, social media posts and through various media reports, overwhelmingly supported the removal of them?
Thanks, Peter. I'll go to Anita, the relevant director, to answer that.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you, Peter, for your question.
Sorry, could you speak up a little bit?
I will, yes. The report for the September Council meeting made a measured recommendation. I don't think the word overwhelming was used, and I haven't described the recommendation that way. The basis for the recommendation was set out clearly in the report.
Sorry, I'm the one that's saying it. All that was overwhelmingly supporting the removal. I'm not saying that.
Thanks for clarifying that one, Peter. Thank you. We do have a couple more statements on this item, so thanks for your question.
There's no yes or no?
Look, Anita did answer your question, so
Sorry?
we're going to have Anita did answer your question, so we're going to have to move on to this next statements on that one. So next up, we've got Pauline Carmichael, who I believe is here in person with a statement.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. My name is Pauline from Pascoe Vale. I had hoped I didn't need to come to another council meeting for a little while. I was hoping that any energy I have left would be put towards working with the officers and the local community on the proposed shimmy and achieving the best possible low-stress connection from Pascoe Street, Hadfield to O'Hay Street and onto the Coburg Activity Centre for bike riders with the least amount of conflict with cars and pedestrians. At the last meeting, it was great to see the officer report contained the genuine feedback from impacted members of the community on the Kent Road Bike Trail. It set out the traffic evidence and included intercept survey feedback, officer observations, who I believe more than one of them or a few of them are engineers. And we must remember the independent traffic safety experts who raised the safety issues some time ago, and their work is based around the principles of safe system approach. So tonight, after everything that's happening in the world, the wars, the atrocities and the fatigue of the referendum and disappointment for a lot of our people in the community, I would have preferred to not have to speak again after 2.5 years. However, I needed to see this through. So over the last couple of days, when I walked down to the cafe to get a coffee, I've tried to talk to as many residents as I could. As you know, every single front-facing resident has signed a letter that I handed into council a few months ago to say that the trial needs to end and there are too many near misses and blind spots that are present that were not present before the trial commenced. The residents are sorry they can't attend this meeting. They have jobs, children, sport, etc. But they all said to please ask councillors to vote based on evidence and can we please be heard? Can those that signed the petitions over the trial period that generally travel to and across the amenities on this 300 metres please be heard? Our federal member Peter Cahill, our state member Anthony Chianflone, the Liberal candidate for Pascoe Vale and Broadmeadows, and every councillor, council officer and members of the engagement team that Ian and I met personally, or anyone that has spent a lot of time observing how the road now operates since the commencement of the trial, have seen with their own eyes the bottleneck and blind spots, and what looks like it might work on paper is not the case. Movement and place are very important words, not misinformation or disinformation. The infrastructure was pop-up, it was a trial, so there's no ripping up required. We have heard that officers do their job without fear or favour. We have been told that we must be mad as there is only perceived safety issues. So I'm disappointed that I need to speak again, and I hope a duty of care with empathy and evidence-based decision-making prevails tonight. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Pauline, for coming in. All right, so next up we've got Asanka Ipa, who has said he's coming in person to give a statement. Do we have Asanka? Nope. All right. If not, then that concludes the previously submitted questions. I'll just... Yep. All right. Then we might move on. No further questions? Are there any other questions in the gallery? Nope. All right. Great. So question time has now concluded at 7:36. So I'll now move on to council reports. So the first report that we've got this evening in the agenda is 7.1, and that's making it safer and easier to walk and ride in Merri-bek, response to notice of motion. Are there any conflicts to disclose on this one? No? If not, do I have a motion? Councillor Pulford, what motion are you moving?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer recommendation with an additional point 6 that was circulated to councillors earlier today by the Director of City Infrastructure. So I can read it out.
Just that point 6, please, yeah.
That council notes, so point 6, that council notes that a report to on the opportunity to index the per capita spend on active travel will be presented to the November 2023 council meeting.
Great. Do you have a seconder for that? Councillor Conlon to second. Councillor Pulford is the mover.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this report is officers' response to a notice of motion that council passed in June at our council meeting in June this year, which was the same meeting that we passed our budget. Through that budget process, we heard really strong support for a greater investment and in active transport infrastructure in our city, and for a speedier rollout of safe bike lanes and better and safer pedestrian infrastructure like footpaths, as well as a range of other things. So council officers have done an incredible amount of work in putting this report together. They've presented 3 options to councillors for ways we could bring forward projects on our capital works plan, which is our big long list of infrastructure projects we're going to do in our community, and specified which projects they think should come forward, and also the different costs for the different options. So the officers recommend option 2. Some of the items in option 2 include an increase in annual expenditure on upgrades to pedestrian accessibility, public lighting and roundabouts, an increase in the funding to deliver outcomes for the Faulkner transport study from 100,000, which is already allocated, it would increase it to 300,000. Earlier delivery of the Coonans Road and Reynolds Parade separated bike lanes projects previously identified in Council's 10-year active travel program, so bringing them to happen much sooner. And commencing a program of Streets for People, which is an approach that council officers propose bringing to our planning of our streets, that looks at the how streets are for not any one user, but for every user. And specifically to apply that for Harding Street in Coburg and Albert Street in Brunswick from the next financial year, as well as project management resources to deliver the above projects. So I'm happy to support option 2. Like, obviously, I really want to see huge transformation of our streets so that they're safe and easy to get around for everybody, whether you're on bike or on foot or in a mobility device or on a motorbike or a car. But I think option 2 strikes the right balance by increasing our ambition, making sure more projects happen sooner, actually changing our streets sooner, in the context of broader budget constraints. We obviously have a lot of decisions we need to make as councillors on what we should spend money on, so I think this strikes the right balance. Just to note the point 6, there were 2 parts of this notice of motion. One was to look at how we can bring projects forward, which this deals with. The second one was to look at whether we could index the $10 we spend per head of our population a year on active transport infrastructure could be indexed to inflation, because as we heard earlier tonight from the bicycle user group, that budget is shrinking proportionately to the council's overall budget at a time when we need to actually be building much faster.
Thanks, Councillor Pulford, last sentence.
Yeah, so this report didn't deal with that, but it will come before us for a decision in November meeting with that amendment.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Pulford. Councillor Conlon?
Yes, happy to support this. So basically...
Sorry,
Excuse me, sorry, can I talk for a moment? Can we have the motion on screen, please?
Yep, is that...
So we can read
Yeah,
those.
of course. Yeah. All right. Oh, okay, cool. The comms team are going to put that one up on the screen. Great. It should be up now. So we'll just start Councillor Conlon's time from 0 and then you can go.
Thanks.
Great.
Thanks. So, one of the dominant issues, almost the dominant issue for council and council laws in the community is basically road safety. It's, now I've been on council now for, I think it's nearly 3 years. And in that time, the common theme is that people are absolutely desperately crying out for council to try to make our streets safer for people to use. And we see that in the plethora of emails that I receive every single week. I'm sure every other councillor does. There's basically a request after request for council to install some kind of safety upgrade to a road, slowing the cars down, speed humps, those sorts of things, traffic signal upgrades, wombat crossings, and also protected bike lanes for people to ride around safely. People are passionate about it, so passionate that they start up localised community groups, and they're all scattered across the municipality, and they're all asking essentially for the same thing, which is, council, can you please build and fund more of these upgrades so that people are safer? And we'll see another report tonight. Tonight's meeting is all about transport and road safety, really. We've got a report coming up about Melville Road and the terrifying number of casualties along just Melville Road, and also there's a statistic in there which shows that there's been 120 serious casualties across Merri-bek since 2020, where people have had crashes with cars. It is a really serious issue, and so this motion is essentially trying to allocate more money so that council can actually start to do a little bit more in building and making our streets safer through actual physical changes to the street. So I really hope council supports this, because it's one thing to get up at council meetings and propose lots of advocacy motions to support community groups to write to the state government. That's all good, and we need to do the advocacy work, but we also control 90% of the road network, and so we can actually make change, and the only way to do that is by actually putting our money where our mouth is and starting to fund it.
Thanks, Councillor Conlon. I'll see if there's a speaker against this motion. Any other speakers in favour of this motion? All right. If not, then we'll put that one to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Can I just check Councillor Riley and Councillor Pavlidis, was that in favour or against? In favour. Great, okay, that has been carried unanimously. There was just, a bit of lag there. So next up is item 7.2, the DeCarl Street bike lanes. Any conflicts to disclose here? Nope. If not, can I have a motion? Someone stick that. Yep.
I can
Councillor
move-
Conlon?
I thought Councillor Bolton was going to move alternative recommendation. I'm happy to move it.
Okay, let's confirm what it is that you're moving first.
There's a motion basically to reinstate the design, the previous design that council adopted, which is to install physically separated bike lanes rather than the current proposal, which is no physical separation.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, let's.
Okay.
So that's a question for.
Yeah. Can I?
Councillor Conlon?
I just want to double check. I think
Let's
I want
just
to
make
sure
sure
I'm
we've got
moving
the right one.
motion.
Yes.
I'll just check what time the revised one was moved.
So for the gallery, there have been a few different motions moving around, so we want to make sure that we're moving the right one for tonight. So we're just taking the time to make sure that we've done that. There have been a lot of emails this afternoon, so it's a bit messy.
Is it the one at 2:05?
Sounds right. Let's see. I think it was yesterday at 9:29 p.m. Yeah, Tuesday 9:29 p.m.
Yeah.
There's a motion that's there.
Yeah, that's one I thought. Yeah.
Yep, so we'll make sure that governance have got that and we'll bring it up onto the screen. Okay, great. Councillor Conlon and Councillor Bolton, can I just check that what is on the screen is what you wish to move in second?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, Councillor Conlon as the mover.
Cool. So yeah, thank you. I'm actually quite concerned with the report and the proposed design in the officer report. So as we all know, council approved physically separated bike lanes onto Carl Street back in June 2021. It was approved and ready to go. Then at an internal behind the closed doors council briefing, councillors were advised that suddenly the approved design was no longer acceptable. The reason provided was that the approved design didn't meet the ideal standard, as the proposed bike lanes were slightly below the preferred width. But there are plenty of examples in an inner city, well-established municipality like Merri-bek, where infrastructure projects almost rarely meet the perfect ideal standard. There's always compromises that have to be made. And if the minor deviation was such a concern, I do think it's curious that it hasn't been mentioned in the officer report. There's no justification given as to why the changes, why we've gone for this alternative design, other than to talk about why this design is better. There's actually no discussion about why the design has been changed like this. And I think what is really concerning is that the current proposed design in the report is actually extremely unsafe. The proposed design is based on Napier Street, Fitzroy, which mixes cars with people who ride bikes. But as people might know, Napier Street and Fitzroy, that route actually works fairly well because the road is either closed to through traffic at various points in the road, or it's actually one way. So there's actually low volumes of traffic and or slow volumes of traffic. But on Carl Street, the officer report notes that there are 2,200 vehicles per day that use the street, and the preferred safe number is 1,500. That's a discrepancy of nearly 40%. But unfortunately, there isn't any proposal in the report to reduce the number of cars that use the street, other than to wait 12 months, see how it goes, and to ask the Department of Transport to install a plastic barrier on Moreland Road, which council's have already been asking the DOT to install for 2 years and it hasn't been done. So the proposal we have here tonight is to change or to downgrade the original design, which physically separated bike riders from cars, due to a minor technical non-compliance with the perfect standard, and instead to replace it with a design that falls grossly short of council's own safety standards. I think this is quite a strange recommendation for a number of reasons, as those outlined above, but also there's been no community opposition to this. The community consultation shows that there was overwhelming support for protected bike lanes. One of the biggest users and most important stakeholders, the Merri-bek Primary School, they want protected bike lanes. 21% of their kids ride to school and they want and they've asked for it. And
Councillor Conlon, last sentence.
Yeah, and we've heard from the principal tonight that Merri-bek Primary would really like council to approve protected bike lanes on this street, not the one that mixes kids with cars.
Thanks, Councillor Conlon. Councillor Bolton as a seconder.
Yes, I feel quite clear about this particular bike lane because I'm also very familiar with the Carl Street and was involved in...
Sue, your mic.
Yes, I was going to say I feel very strongly about this particular proposal. I'm very familiar with DeKalb Street and I was involved in the campaign to try and get a school crossing supervisor at the DeKalb Street.
Sorry, Sue, can you speak into the microphone, please?
Oh, sorry, closer to the mic.
Just hold it closer.
Okay,
Yeah.
alrighty, no worries. Okay, I'll hold it closer.
Thanks.
And I think this is a school route. And it's not just any school route, it's a primary school route. So I feel really uncomfortable with the idea of traffic smooching into the bike lane, painted bike lane, in order to pass when you've got primary school kids using that road to ride to school. It's also a notorious rat run, and that was why the Merri-bek primary school crossing on DeKalb Street was so dangerous, because a lot of cars just zoomed south, zoomed north, and at great speeds and nearly knocking over a lot of kids. And so a lot of kids and parents stopped using that crossing to go to school and walked the long way round. So I feel this is a different kind of street to Napier Street. The rat running has continued despite the blockage at Moreland Road now, because the traffic coming north just scoots around the laneway and back into DeKalb Street and zooms north. So I think we're asking for trouble if we go ahead with the proposed design. I would prefer the separated bike lane, even though it is a compromised offering on the basis of the width of the road. I feel quite clear that we really need to have a separated bike lane in this location. And these are primary school kids, they're not high school kids. I mean, there will be high school kids, I'm sure, using it, but, you know, just think of the age of the primary school kids. If a kid hits a rock or a stone or something on that bike lane and throws them off balance and a car goes too close, we all know that a lot of cars do think cyclists are paper thin and don't necessarily move out of the road for cyclists. So I'm just really concerned about the potential dangers of this proposed design. So that's why I'm supporting the alternative resolution.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Bolton. Are there any speakers against this motion? Just unmute yourself.
Yes. Just want to confirm that this is no trial. This is actually putting in what we've got in Kent Road into DeKalb Street, isn't it?
It's a different thing, technically.
Well, how different is it, really? Yeah, but visually, how different really is it?
Anita, are you able to perhaps address why this situation might be different to Kent Road?
Through you, Mayor. So this proposed cross-section that the alternate motion is putting forward is to have separated bike lanes which have a parking lane next to them. So that is similar to the cross-section of Kent Road as it currently stands. So there is a bike lane, a parking lane, a single lane for traffic, then another parking lane and another bike lane. So that's where there is a similarity. The cross-section, the traffic lanes are sort of similar cross-section, and the buffer zones for dooring are similar as well. So there's an area where if somebody opens a car door from a parked car, there's a buffer in between that and the bike lane. The distinction is that this is a full length of, not the full length of DeCarl Street, but a long length of DeCarl Street, north of Moreland Road, and it goes through a few intersections on the way as well. And so it's not the same cross-section for the full length, and there are some differences in the width of the lanes.
Great. Thanks, Anita. We've also got a question from Councillor Davidson.
Yeah. Thank you, Anita, for clarifying.
Just speak a bit closer to the mic, yeah.
My question is in relation to safety, for particularly around the school area, and how the proposed design now caters for that, and whether, in officers' opinion, who are the experts in this, they have determined that this is the most safe and appropriate option for that area.
So again, through the Mayor. So the particular cross-section near the school is the same proposal as the cross-section further north. So those last few blocks all have a very similar cross-section in the alternative motion, and that's what you're referring to, isn't it?
No, I'm looking at the officer report and just asking you to confirm that the considerations of children's safety at the school has been considered when suggesting the proposal where there's parking on either side and bikes on either side and the cars in the middle.
Yep. So the access to the school, I would imagine, is from the street on the north, which I forget the name of. Is it Blair Street? Blair. Yeah. And that's where we have open streets from time to time. So access from the north of the school for those who are coming from the north is the preferred way to get into the school. And so the access from the street into the side street would just be a matter of any cyclist on the road making a normal turn into the street like everyone else. And if they're primary school children, of course, they're entitled to ride on the footpath as well.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
All right, we were going to have two more questions, one from Councillor Tapanos and then one from Councillor Hart, and then we will hopefully get back, and from Councillor Pavlidis, and then hopefully we will get back into the actual debate. Councillor Tapanos.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a number of questions, particularly around which is the previous endorsed model and also whether there'll be a trial. But I don't think we can cover all of these tonight. So I'm going to move a deferral of this report and request a briefing be held for councillors, because it seems that there's a lot of questions around the table.
All right, just to clarify, like we have already had a couple of briefings on this and we also have our Monday night briefings, but noting that you feel as though councillors aren't prepared, I'll see if you've got a seconder for that deferral motion. Okay. All right, so I've got Councillor Tapanos to move a deferral motion, Councillor Yildiz to second it, and that will be to defer it until next month's council meeting. Yep, all right, so all those in favour of the deferral motion? Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hands up. All those against the deferral, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hands up, and I'm going to use my casting vote, so that deferral is lost. We will be discussing and debating this one tonight. So we've had mover, the seconder, a couple of questions. Councillor Tapanos, did you have any other questions? Yes or no?
I just don't know where to start and where to end.
Okay, just a yes or no is all I need.
Has a trial capacity been considered as an option?
So are you requesting an alternative then as a trial or not?
I was asking a question whether a trial had been considered.
All right, we'll see if that's been considered.
So no, a trial hasn't been considered by officers at this point.
Great. Councillor Hart, your question.
My statement was actually also to seek a deferral.
All right, that's been lost, so can we go straight to the question? Okay.
No, well, no, my comments were really about the reasons that a deferral would benefit and maybe get the motion through.
We've already debated that. We don't need to hear about reasons. Councillor Pavlidis, did you have your hand up still with a question?
Yes, please. So it probably goes to a few of us, but obviously there were concerns that officers came back with a different proposal. And I acknowledge there was a briefing way back, I don't know, a year ago, whatever it was. Realistically, I don't think any of us remember it. And to turn around and come back the night of the meeting and say we're going to go to the previous endorsed model.
All right, is that a question? Councillor Pavlidis?
Yes.
All right, get to your question, please.
The consultation on this, if this was to be adopted tonight, it gets implemented, correct? So there is no opportunity for the community to have a say, is that correct?
Yep, so it's approving the implementation because we've just had consultation on the project. All right, so I think that answers your question. So we'll go back to debate.
No, it doesn't, because the consultation was on the previous one, not this model.
All right, so this motion, as it's up on the screen, says to approve the installation of the separated bike lanes. So that, I suppose, answers that in that there's no wording in there to go out for further consultation. So I'll see if there's any... Okay, Councillor Pulford, sorry, you have your hand up. Can I ask
I'd like to contribute to the debate in favour.
Yes. Firstly, I need to ask if there's a speaker against this motion, so I can stick with the for and against. Councillor Pavlidis to speak against, and then Councillor Pulford, I'll go to you after. Councillor Pavlidis.
I think I already mentioned some of my objection to when I asked the question. As I said, to me, this is just being sprung on. It was presented, as we said, a year ago, whatever it was. Obviously, work was done to it. Officers don't think it was the appropriate model to implement, hence why they've come up with an alternative one that they've presented to us tonight. And to implement, I don't know whether it's just me, but did we not learn anything from Kent Road? You're trying to implement something without having, in the consultation, if I'm not mistaken, I did ask a question about the consultation, and it didn't even go to the neighbouring streets. So the consultation that was done on that proposal was basically more so by the bicycle users group, and not the residents who actually live on the site, on streets that intersect with it. So I'm not voting for this without consultation with the community and the people that it actually affects. Apart from the bicycle user group and the primary school, there are thousands or hundreds of properties that intersect with that road, and they should have a say.
Great, thanks, Councillor Pavlidis. Councillor Pulford.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to speak against the fact that this isn't being thrown up there. This is in the agenda. At the briefing on Monday night, it was flagged an alternative will be requested for separated bike lanes. That was emailed to councillors last night. There's been discussion over email today. The Director of City Infrastructure has responded to Councillor Hart's questions about whether there were safety concerns around the previous design, and the Director of City Infrastructure has made it clear. In summary, this is a direct quote from the email councillors received today. In summary, if the alternative motion is passed, it would be knowing that there are some compromises built into the design, largely around comfort for bike riders to do with bike lane width and ride quality. We've also included in the alternative motion additional calming measures to the roundabouts to improve safety at these intersections. So this alternative we're considering has actually come from officers, and they've made some tweaks to the design that went out to consultation to deal with some of the concerns that were raised there. But really, the compromise here is on bike riders' behalf. And from the design put out in the agenda, which is not separated bike lanes, which would see cars potentially swerving into bike lanes, that's much less safe for people than having separated bike lanes, that there is a barrier between them and the traffic lane, and that's, again, what the Director of City Infrastructure points out in her email today. But it will protect cyclists a lot more having a separated, protected bike lane than having cars kind of freely swerving in and out. I just wanted to raise a couple more points. The design did go out for consultation, and there were only 2 people opposed to it, so there isn't this huge community backlash against these designs. At the most recent consultation, when Council went out with this updated design, 58 out of the 77 respondents had a preference for separated bike lanes. Tonight, we've had the Merri-bek Primary School principal here saying for her students, it would be safer to have protected bike lanes. We had a question about student safety. I think that answers that. So it's already been consulted on. Yes, it's slightly different, but that's addressing some of the concerns of the design that was consulted on. And the director has said that the compromise here is on bike riders' behalf. So we need more separated bike lanes in our city because we need more people to feel safe to ride around, and that includes to schools. And that's good for our climate, it's good for our health, it's good because there's less pollution. But also, this is about, you know, a pathway for students to get to school. And don't we want our kids to be safe and to feel safe and to like have some freedom on our streets? Like, where's the vision here? We shouldn't just be like a funnel full of cars. Like, we can actually change our streets to make them safer, nicer, better for everybody, including kids. And this is right next to a school. I think, yeah, so this is why I'm happy to support the alternative tonight. And I don't think councillors need more time.
Great, thanks, Councillor Pulford. Are there any other speakers against this motion? Councillor Hart?
I don't particularly want to speak against it at all, and because I've read that and I hear that the survey showed their support for protected lanes. I've heard what our speaker tonight, Lisa, has said, and I've also heard what the school have said. My only issue was wanting to understand this more. That's what I thought was critical, so that there was a bit more opportunity to weigh up the feedback we had tonight, to consider that against what I've only ever been here for one, I think, previous briefing. I know this issue, Carl's been going on for a long time. I was here for the November briefing, which I remember well, where they raised the issues. So, and that's why I raised some of the questions today, because I've been grappling, trying to look at designs, trying to understand, and that's why I would have supported a deferral motion for an ability to have this discussion with the officers about that very nature of compromise, and how do we weigh this up in these situations. And I think that's a very valid discussion, but it's one that I find difficult to do here at this meeting. I see Councillor Lambros looking at sort of diagrams as we're discussing this. So I don't know if there's any way you can think of a way through that resolution still that somehow allows there to be a little bit of more room and time for exploration, because I feel a commitment to what I've heard tonight, but on the basis of I don't feel able to vote for it tonight, and that disappoints me. And it's the process that I'm really talking about, so that we come up with something we're all satisfied with.
Thanks,
can I ask
Councillor Hart.
Is it possible to ask a question? If, given that this is a debate, I'm really curious to know what your concerns are to see what might be able to be brought in. Is that possible, just to have that, just out of genuine, like, wanting to understand?
But that's, okay, just because of the structure of, I guess, this meeting and the fact that we do have briefings for that, are you then going to request an adjournment to understand that? Because we can't have back and forth between different councillors.
No.
Okay, all right. Councillor Davidson?
But that is precisely why a deferral is needed.
All right, we've already discussed it and
Okay,
debated it,
and
though.
this is why I'm saying now I'm voting against it. And I don't necessarily want to vote against it. But no.
All right.
And
okay,
I
councillors,
don't
we don't need the back
appreciate
and forth.
comments coming from the side of me either. I've been always courteous to you. Always.
right.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Davidson, you wish to speak against this?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Go ahead.
And in favour of the officer recommendation.
Great.
And I'll be foreshadowing moving the officer recommendation if this isn't successful. I feel that this is coming to us now, and the request for an alternate motion was put forward yesterday. I haven't had time to weigh up the pros and cons of that right now. And I've got an officer report that we have experts suggesting that this is the best option for this particular route, that have considered the nature of the street, the type of residents on the street, and the school as well. And we've got comments in here in relation to why the design has been changed. That was one of the questions asked as well. And it talks about how unfeasible it is to widen the carriageway to accommodate separated bike lanes. They say it's not feasible. I don't know why it's not feasible. I'm not an expert in this area and I need time to understand it. And that time isn't right now tonight. It's a discussion about this new amendment that can happen over the course of the next month so that councillors and residents can come along for this journey and potentially support separated bike lanes. There's no way I want to put cyclists or children at risk here, but I want to know why this report and this change was considered to be the most appropriate and most safe to put forward tonight by experts in this area that we employ here at Council. This design has been tried in Napier Street in Fitzroy, and it's been successful there. I think that rushing into this now, when clearly there's 5 councillors here out of 10 who have concerns, and I think councillors need to come along for this journey and understand exactly what they're voting on instead of just voting a blanket no. Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Davidson. I'll see if there are any other speakers in favour of this motion. If not, if there are any other speakers against this motion, Councillor Tapanos, and then we might wrap it up then.
Sorry, I'm not against the motion. I'm going to abstain, partly because I still haven't been able to work out which of the 4 diagrams is the proposed model which is going to be implemented. And there are all sorts of differences in them. Some of them have a barrier width of 0.4 of a metre, others have a lane of 0.5, others have a barrier width of 0.8 or 0.6. So I just don't know which it is, and it does need to be compared to the standards. You can't just ignore standards and say, well, this is better than nothing approach. So overall, I think we all voted to support separated bike lanes here. The way we actually deliver projects in the council, the best way to deliver projects is to thoroughly investigate all of the options and see what the best way forward is. I don't think that's been done here. I don't think an amendment at the last minute on the fly to implement a different recommendation is the appropriate way to go. So I just can't, as much as I want to support it because I have voted for separated bike lanes on the Carl Street, I can't support something I don't know what it is. So I'll be abstaining from this vote and I'll be abstaining from the subsequent vote as well until we have proper discussion and can come up with a plan that we could support as a council and that can have confidence in the community, because at the moment I don't know if anyone in this room, apart from probably the mover and the seconder, know exactly what's being proposed to be installed. And we're not going to install this tomorrow, so waiting for a month is not going to delay this project. So I really don't see why we should rush to approve this tonight.
Great, thanks, Councillor Tapanos. I might see if there's any other contributions in debate. If not, we'll go back to the mover for his right of reply, Councillor Conlon.
Look, I'm just sort of becoming more and more lost for words on this sort of broader issue about bike lanes. It's kind of one of those issues which, like, the opposing arguments are so illogical that it's really hard to kind of come up with a logic. I mean, at the end of the day, as we keep saying, physically separated bike lanes protect people from cars. Cars are heavy things that squash people. There's an imbalance of physics here. Like the idea that safety is always brought up as this key concern from, concerned councillors who want, they really are concerned about the safety of all road users. And then they oppose the specific interventions that slow cars down and separate vulnerable human beings from cars. It's just bonkers. And I think I'd prefer it if we started to have a more honest conversation about where we actually sit on protected bike lanes, because then it'll actually make the whole job of councillors and the administration a lot easier, rather than sort of pretending to be supportive of this way or that way. Yeah, because it's just getting really silly.
Thanks, Councillor Conlon. So we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour of this alternative motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those against this alternative motion? 1, 2. All those abstaining? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that then is 1 on my casting vote, as it was a 5 and then technically 5 the other way. So that has been carried. Now, I realise in the agenda I did forget to request that we bring up the Kent Road rescission motion, just because we've got people in the gallery for it. Can I see if councillors are amenable to bringing that up to where we are now?
Sure.
Great, okay, thanks. I'll scroll down. All right, so after that one, we'll bring up the Glenroy Library item. So I'm just going to scroll down. There's a lot to scroll through. To item 9, which is notices of rescission. And of course, we've got the one rescission motion, and that is on what was last month's report 7.1, the conclusion of Kent Road separated bike lane trial and next steps for Coburg to Glenroy bike route. Are there any conflicts of interest to disclose from councillors? If not, can I please have a motion? Councillor Conlon, you're moving the rescission motion? Yep, and I'll see if you've got a seconder for that one. Councillor Bolton to second that, okay. All right, Councillor Conlon as the mover.
Yeah, so I'm moving a rescission motion to, I guess, stop the last council decision which voted to remove the protected bike lanes on Kent Road. And the reason I've cited for that is for not having the full council here, but also there's been, I think there's been a lot of misinformation in the lead up to the council, as well as more information that has come up during or after the decision. So that, yeah, my comments have started. Yeah, so basically, look, again, tonight, this whole council meeting is like extremely heavily based about active transport. We really, you know, like many councillors keep expressing support for active transport and wanting to make our streets safer, and tonight is really an opportunity for councillors to, again, put their money where their mouth is and start to actually fund those changes and actually vote for the changes that will actually lead to making our streets safer for everyone. Yeah, so I think that we really need to revisit the issue of Kent Road. The officer report, I think council made a decision where we didn't quite have the full proper information at the time. Again, the consultation process was based on a survey, which in my view was quite flawed because it didn't actually ask the community the right questions. It actually asked the community to compare the perceived safety of the existing design, which was a compromised design, without asking the community to compare the existing design with no bike lane at all. And I think I'm pretty confident that if we asked the community these correct questions, that we would have found out that there is actually more support. I also think there's been a pretty concerted long-term campaign by vested interests against this particular project, and I think that's actually the reason why this issue has been has sustained and taken up so much council time due to the vested interests of a particular group who was able to organise, I think, confected outrage about this particular project. And I think that business that we know had a vested interest in actually removing the project because it did involve a couple of the removal of a few on-street car parks in front of that business. And I think it's interesting that this is the same type of politics that's stopping council, or not council, the state government from transforming Sydney Road into a street for people, in that we've got a small number of vested interests who are arguing against it. So I think council really needs to revisit this decision in the interest of the community, rather than a small number of vested interests.
Thanks, Councillor Conlon. Councillor Bolton as the seconder. We'll just leave it at that one. Councillor Bolton as the seconder. Nothing to add. So I'll see if we've got any speakers against this decision. Oh, sorry guys, I did it for once. We'll see. So Councillor Conlon spoke as the mover. Councillor Bolton will be reserving her right, and I'll see if there's any speakers against this rescission motion. Any speakers in favour of this rescission motion? Councillor Tapanos, do you want to say something?
I was a bit baffled by the mover's speech, and I want to know what he meant by vested interests.
I think we might not get into that given the forum. I think it might be best to take that one, perhaps the specifics of that perhaps out of this public forum. Yeah, let's just take that out of this public forum for the sake of this debate. So I'll just see once again if there are any speakers against this rescission motion or any speakers in favour of it.
I'm just going to say that this matter has been debated quite extensively at the last meeting and at previous meetings, and the council resolved a position on it. I have not received any information in the last month to alter council's decision. I have certainly not had any additional information from an engineering perspective, any additional work, any additional reasoning to request that council review a decision. It seems that this has come about not because rescissions are normally moved because something has come up we didn't consider and we want to resubmit it to the council with new information. But there's no new information here. There's nothing. I lost the vote and I want to try again. And I just don't think that's good governance. We really want to get into a process where every time we lose a vote, we just put up rescissions. I mean, the rescission is really there. Its purpose is there to reconsider something when we've got additional information that we didn't have previously. We're recommitting this. We're being asked to relook at it again. But there's, the question is, there's nothing further to look at. So what's changed between now and last month? I don't know. I mean, what's changed? I haven't had any responses. The mover hasn't spoken to me about it. Officers haven't spoken to me about it. So I really don't see why this council should change its position.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Tapanos. I'll see if there's any other speakers. If Councillor Pavlidis that's speaking, I presume, against the rescission motion?
Yeah, I'll be brief. I'm actually gobsmacked, but anyway. I was on leave for the 30th of September council meeting. So subsequently, I viewed the meeting online. This matter was debated for nearly an hour at last month's council meeting. And I concur with the comments that were made by the community and by councillor colleagues. These bike lanes have been trialled for over 2 years and they have had various modifications made due to concerns that have been raised over that time. The local community, council officers and the majority of councillors at the last meeting all believe that this has gone on long enough. The separated bike lanes should be removed. We've been hearing that for over 2 years. And just to reiterate, sort of something that Councillor Conlon said, I think it's wise to consider someone's words because the social media that was put on could account as being intimidating someone. So unless you've been to Kent Road and actually seen what it actually does and how it hinders and the safety concerns raised, I don't think you're in a position to pass judgment. This is about separated bike lanes, irrespective of whether they're appropriate for the location that is being chosen. Obviously, this one isn't. Nothing further.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Pavlidis. All right, I might go back to Councillor Conlon if he wishes to exercise his right of reply, and then we'll put that one. Councillor Davidson? Okay, Councillor Davidson had her hand up first. Just what would you like to ask?
I'd like to speak against this rescission motion coming back to council.
Okay. And then we might wrap up debating. No? Okay, we've got lots more. Okay, sorry, then Councillor Davidson, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Now, as Councillor Tapanos has said, rescission motions come to council very infrequently, and they come to us when there has been new evidence presented, there's been discussion, that we've had a realisation or a turnaround because of empirical evidence that we have now obtained that we need to re-debate this. However, in this case, we have not received any word from council officers. No councillor on this council has approached me to say, there's something new that we haven't considered. Helen, can you please look at this? No one has said that. And I always come to council with an open mind and good intentions. No one has approached me. It is not good governance when we don't like a decision to turn around and say, I'm going to change that by putting a rescission motion to council on the night of the decision. There was no time for new information to come to light at that point, and I haven't received any information since. Now, council voted, and even if that decision is not liked, it needs to be accepted. And there are many, many decisions on council that I don't support, but I accept, and I don't turn around and write an email requesting a rescission motion. It is purely not good governance at all. And then trying to stack numbers to see whether or not you can but potentially change it by some other means at a later date. That's not appropriate. It's not good governance, and it doesn't hold this council in high regard by the public. It causes the public to look at us and think there's something underhand going on here. And it's concerning to me that we are here now after 2 years of hearing about this matter, and we're back the following month because of something like this that is almost underhanded. I'm not going to reopen the debate that I spoke on last time because my position hasn't changed, because no one has approached me. No officer has, no councillor has, and it's really disappointing now that I have to sit here on Merri-bek City Council and talk about a rescission motion that shouldn't be here. What new information is there? Nothing.
Thanks, Councillor Davidson.
Just very quickly.
Just quickly, Councillor Yildiz, you were against the rescission.
Yes.
I'll just go to Councillor Bolton first, and then yourself, and then we'll wrap up debate on this rescission motion. Councillor Bolton, we'll just make sure that you're unmuted. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for the reminder. I was initially annoyed when I saw the rescission motion come through, but actually I have been doing a lot of thinking about all of the different angles about the Kent Street bike lanes, and I did indicate at the last meeting that I felt very conflicted about the particular bike lanes, because I do think separated bike lanes have to work in particular areas. But I've also been doing further investigation of the shimmy, but also which directions people cycle around the particular area. And I've changed my opinion on the bike lanes. So I feel I do have new information. It may not sway other councillors, but I feel I do have some other information, which to me, I think have convinced me to change my opinion. So I actually do welcome the opportunity for us to discuss rescinding the decision and reopening the vote. But, I think there are some, I didn't necessarily agree with all of the arguments that were put forward by Councillor Conlon. I thought some were sort of pretty sloganistic. But I do, because I think you have to look at the complexities. Whenever we put in any piece of infrastructure, there are a lot of complexities and sometimes conflicting interests, and I think it's better to try and resolve them rather than just ram them through. But I feel that I have sufficient information now to actually change my position on the Kent Road bike lane. So I feel that I welcome the rescission motion now.
Great. So, thanks, Councillor Bolton. We'll go to Councillor Yildiz, and then we'll go to Councillor Hart, and then we'll wrap up debate on this one.
So just for the public, we and the people in the sitting out in the gallery there, we don't work, many of us don't work full-time at this council, we've got full-time jobs. So in the last 15 years, I've trusted the officers. It would be very rare that I've voted against the officer recommendations because they're our experts. This is what they do. They do this day in, day out, excuse me. So our officers are here full-time. They're engineers, they're qualified. They're employed with their skills and experience and qualifications in being able to make the right decisions. 2 years of a trial, we've had experts, and I would say some councils around this table would agree, that our experts are our officers. I've got absolute faith and trust in them. Yes, residents have been jumping up and down, and rightly so, because I go down to that street fairly often. I don't live too far from there, and I know some of the councillors here have actually been there and sat there, not at 11 a.m. in the morning. We've been there at different times of the day. So we've been there at 8:30 in the morning. We've then gone up there at 3:30 in the afternoon. And yeah, there is a medical centre there. Yeah, the medical centre hasn't really made too much noise because I think residents in and around that street have been the ones who have had more of the voice. This just proves that this has become a purely political exercise. To those councillors who voted for the removal, I question your judgment. I actually question how quickly, in a couple of weeks, you can stand up here and go, yep, great decision, we need to remove them, and then come back here and go, no, it wasn't a right decision, let's not remove them. This just proves a couple of things in my head anyway, that this council's being hijacked, that this council is becoming so political that you can no longer have an opinion, you can no longer stand up here and say what you feel, because you're going to get shut down, and if you do get up here and talk, and not agree with other people, you get ridiculed. We see on social media, and we hear residents ringing us up and going, well, he said this, she said that. 15 years, and I have to say this is the worst decision yet again, and the last 3 years we've had some pretty poor decisions, and this is yet again another one. This is a slap in the face, not just for the residents, but this is a slap in the face for those people that I've got so much confidence in, and they're the people that sit around the tables at the back here, in the gallery, and we've got just on 1,100 of them.
Thanks, Councillor Yildiz. So I've got Councillor Hart, then I'll go to Councillor Conlon for his right of reply, and then we will vote on this and make a decision. Councillor Hart, just make sure you're unmuted, please.
Okay, thanks. The rescission process is part of our governance rules, therefore it is part of the democratic process, although I'm not sure it's been used with that degree of integrity on this occasion. I also note the right of people, the advocacy, and I also note the broad advocacy that has been there for bicycle users and for many in terms of broader advocacy around the need for protected bike lanes. And I endorse and I understand that. It is my deep regret, I think, that Kent Road has been used as a political weapon and a political tool in this debate. And I don't really know how to answer some of Councillor Conlon's comments tonight, because on the whole, I often respect his advocacy and his ability to be an advocate for what he believes in. But I honestly lost the plot in what he was talking about tonight, I have to say. I have never seen such a ramble about notions of vested interest. Who on earth is vested interest? Are we talking
Councillor
about
Hart,
the
let's
residents?
keep it to the rescission motion and why we should or shouldn't vote for it, please.
Okay, well, that is one reason why we shouldn't. I don't know who the vested interests are. What I know we have are residents of the area, we have residents of Kent Road, and we have many, many people who have communicated to us around Kent Road. In terms of the rescission motion, I will keep it to that. Thank you, Mayor. I see this question in two parts. I see one part of that question is around the trial at Kent Road. I see the other part of that motion does refer to the option of a shimmy. I don't believe the right time to debate the shimmy is around this motion. I think the shimmy debate is what will occur around the consultation that is the next stage of this process. So that's why I actually differ with Councillor Bolton on her reasons in terms of changing her vote. I respect her right to, but that's my reasons for differ. I separate them out, and I think the shimmy process, I know there are concerns about the shimmy process, but I think that is the next stage of this process, and I think there are two different prongs to it. So in terms of the rescission motion, I don't see there is a need for that tonight. I think conclusively we voted around the trial on Kent Road at the last meeting.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Councillor Conlon, for your right of reply.
Yep. So I do hear and appreciate the concerns about this particular procedure that I've used, and I understand that it's a rarely used one, and I think councillors will know that I've never used a notice of rescission, and I don't plan to make it a pattern of a common thing. I use it sparingly in this. I think this is a really important issue to the council. But first, I want to kind of comment on some of the things that have been said. I'm happy. I don't think it's fair to say that I've been rambling. I've been thinking and considering this issue for a very long time, investigated it, researched it, talked to lots and lots of people about it. So I would hope my comments are reasonably considered. And I don't think it's a rant, and I don't think I've been putting out conspiracy theories or anything. Like, I'm happy to have further conversations offline about what I think is the vested interest, but I can say that I do think there is a certain business or businesses in the area that have run a concerted campaign against this trial for a number of years. Then they are powerful because they do speak to people every day, and they are able to influence the outcome of council processes. It is exactly what has happened on Sydney Road for many, many years, though. The traders are, the traders associations, I should say, not necessarily the traders, the associations, they do have a significant influence over public debate and how public perceives certain things. I do think that, I do think there is an extenuating circumstances to employ this particular procedure. Like I said, I do think the decision was made on some flawed information, or the basis of the officer report didn't actually ask the community the correct question, which is, what's your perception of safety if there's no bike lane there?
Last two sentences, because we've got
3 minutes.
2 minutes for right of reply.
And I think the fact that some councillors are considering their decision does justify my position, in that councillors have appreciated the opportunity to revisit their decision. And I'm genuinely happy to have further conversations with councillors offline to explain in more detail why I use this unusual procedure.
Thanks, Councillor Conlon. So we'll put that one to the vote then. So we're voting on the actual rescission motion itself. And can I confirm, Councillor Conlon, so you've circulated this via email, but can I confirm that you've foreshadowed an alternative? Yes. Yep, and that is to make the lanes permanent?
Correct.
Okay, great. Okay, so right now, pardon?
It's not a foreshadowing.
Oh, we have to make a positive, we have to decide on a positive motion if the rescission motion succeeds. So firstly, we're going to vote on the rescission motion itself. So all those in favour of this rescission motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those against this rescission motion is the 5, and I'm going to use my casting vote. So the rescission motion has passed. So now we'll move on to...
Can we get a division?
Yes, we'll get a division on that. So all those in favour were Councillor Bolton. That was not you, Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Bolton, Councillor Pulford, Councillor Conlon, Councillor Riley and myself. And then all those against were Councillor Yildiz, Councillor Hart, Councillor Tapanos, Councillor Davidson and Councillor Pavlidis. So now the rescission motion has passed, and so now we need to make a decision on a new motion. And so, Councillor Conlon, can I confirm what that motion is?
Point of order, I don't believe that is correct. We're in section 9, notices of rescission. There are no further notices of rescission. Therefore, we move back to officer reports in section 7. I don't think there really is capacity for another motion to be moved unless it's another rescission motion. And even then, it doesn't have
Councillor
notice.
Tapanos, we'll get the governance advice on that one to make that super clear for people on our next steps. So, Eve, if you're please able to provide that advice on the process from here.
Yes, thank you for your question. Under section 3.74 of the governance rules, there's a section that talks about no discussion once a vote has been declared. And under that section, it does refer to another motion being put forward or a positive motion where a resolution has just been rescinded.
Okay. And because of the nature of this thing, it was a trial concluding, we do need an actual decision on this. So, Councillor Conlon, can we make sure that what you want to move is up on the screen, and we'll make sure that you've got a seconder for that one. Councillor Pulford to second. I'll just make sure that that's the right thing up there. Yes? All right, so let me just write this down. Councillor Conlon, do you wish to speak to this, given the debate
I won't,
we've had?
not too much, just to explain it that, yeah, since we've cancelled or rescinded the last council decision, which was to remove the bike lanes on Kent Road, this alternative, or this motion is to keep them and to make them permanent. I might leave my comments for now because I've spoken a lot and we've debated this a lot, so happy to see if there's other people who want to make comments.
Great. Councillor Pulford is the seconder.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is the alternative that I tried to move at the last council meeting when Kent Road came before us. I'm so happy to support it again tonight and happy to stick with my position of saving the Kent Road bike lanes and support the rescission earlier this evening. Just to note that this point 4 installs a zebra crossing outside Pascoe Vale Health Medical Centre, which will help make it easier for people to cross getting into that centre, which was recommended by council officers anyway, whether we kept or, well, it was recommended if we were to take out the lanes, but I thought, you know, there are still some changes we can make to that area to help make people feel more safe and comfortable. And so the zebra crossing is quite important, so I'm glad that's there. Yeah, look, you know, I think we need more protected bike lanes and I don't think it's the right thing to be ripping them out. And so I'm pleased that there's a potential for council tonight to be voting to keep the bike lanes. We'll see how it goes.
Thanks, Councillor Pulford. I'll see if there are any speakers against this, just noting, of course, we've had significant debate, so if people can keep it to new points.
I'm going to speak against this, and I'm not going to address the substance of the matter because I think we've got there, but just on process, because this is becoming a bit of a joke, it's becoming a bit of a merry-go-round. It's not the way to actually make progressive change. If you want cycling infrastructure and separated bike lanes, you work with the community, you work with councillors, you don't play these kind of procedural games in the chamber. That is no way to proceed to have long-lasting change. What happens tomorrow? We're going to get another rescission motion tonight. Is it going to be changed tomorrow? Are they going to be ripped out tomorrow? Are they going to be reinstalled the next meeting? Is this policy, and this is residents, ratepayers' money that is being spent on installing infrastructure, removing infrastructure, installing other infrastructure, removing other infrastructure. It is just not a way to govern a city. It is childish in my view. It is not appropriate, and I just can't really stand for it. And it's not lasting, and you know it's not lasting. You know this decision will be changed in the future. What are we doing? Let's just defer everything, have a serious conversation about moving forward, and stop wasting residents' time and money on things that are just going to be changed tomorrow.
Thanks, Councillor Tapanos. I'll see if there are any other speakers in favour of this motion. Councillor Bolton, just your microphone, yep, thank you.
So my reasons for changing my position on this. In the last council meeting when I voted to remove the bike lanes, I guess there are two key things in my mind. And first, I would like to say I don't think it is wise to just dismiss the safety conflicts that did exist around the medical centre in the first year of the trial, because I think they were real. They were real. Just wishing them away means you're not resolving those conflict issues. And I think to make bike lanes stick and remain permanently, you need to resolve any safety conflicts between different user groups, cyclists and other user groups. But I felt that most of those issues, not all, but mostly were resolved by in the second year of the trial when there were different concrete separators. And I know the bike lanes do add an element of inconvenience for local residents, but I think what influenced my vote at the last meeting, and I really didn't particularly want to vote at the last meeting on either of the options, was I was very much affected by feeling personally safer around the shimmy and feeling that, I wouldn't want to ride beyond Cumberland Road plus the survey. But I think in talking a lot more to people and going around the shimmy further, I've discovered that there are blind spots on the shimmy which make it dangerous, which I hadn't noticed my first time down the shimmy. And then secondly, I discovered there actually are a lot more cyclists that use Derby Street than I had realised. And also that includes parents who cycle their kids to the Derby Street Childcare Centre. At the last meeting, I was more thinking about people visiting Cumberland Road, facilities, which the shimmy does take you to, but the shimmy doesn't take you to things like the Derby Street Childcare Centre. And I do recognise, after thinking about this a lot more deeply, that a lot of cyclists, just like car drivers and pedestrians, want to take the quickest and most direct routes to get where they're going, where they need to go. And so that's why a lot of cyclists, even though they might feel unsafe going beyond the separated bike lanes on Kent Road, do go down Kent Road to Derby Street. So I also can't think of any other street where you could safely
Thanks.
do
Councillor
a
Bolton,
separate
your
bike
last
lane.
sentence.
So that's the logic of my thinking around the bike lane. So that's why I have changed my position on the bike lane. So I've thought about it a lot.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Bolton. I'll see if there are any other speakers against this. I've got Councillor Pavlidis with her hand up.
I would just like to ask a question. If the possibility of this item being deferred to the next month, and I will quote what's written in the agenda under the rescission notice. The reason Councillor Conlon gave to rescind the motion was that on the basis that two councillors were absent from the meeting and were not able to vote on this important matter that has been the subject of significant community debate and involvement.
All right.
So by deferring to the next meeting, we could possibly have all councillors and all councillors can have a say.
All right. Thanks, Councillor Pavlidis. So I'll take that as a motion to defer this, this motion. I'll see if you've got a seconder for that. Councillor Tapanos to second. All those in favour of deferring? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those against deferring? 5 the other way. So that has been lost. So we will be making a decision on this one tonight. Councillor Davidson, do you wish to speak against this motion?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Thanks, Councillor Davidson.
So the irony and the hypocrisy in this is baffling. When the report says the purpose for the rescission motion is to have the full body of councillors here, and yet a deferral motion comes forward and one councillor is missing, and that deferral motion is voted down by the councillor who put forward the rescission motion based on those particular reasons. To add to that, I think there's been quite a concerted social media campaign put forward that almost verges on bullying
Point of order.
and ridicule.
All right.
Point of
let's
order.
just-
That's so inappropriate.
Is it really though?
Yes, because
All right, okay,
Councillor
Councillor,
Ewing has-
Would you like me to read out the social media
All right,
post?
councillors.
do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I will.
Councillors, let's just tone it down for a moment and not interject when other councillors
Because this
are
is what
speaking.
happens when you make a mockery of the process.
Councillor Davidson, can I please just, like, I can hear your passion, but we'll just please tone it down for a moment. Councillor Pulford, if you could not interrupt. We'll just stick to the content of what we're debating today. And I suppose if there's, issues with what's been said by particular people or particular groups online, I'd encourage councillors to raise that within our own, complaint mechanisms. If people are feeling as though they have been subject to things online that aren't appropriate, please do raise that internally. But for this item for tonight, can we please just keep the debate to the actual bike lane proposal itself? And then we can make a decision on this and get to the rest of our items, because we've got a very big agenda. Thanks. Thank you.
Now, last council meeting, I spoke extensively on this. And I wrote down my speech, and I will force everyone to hear it again. The officer report agrees that the best option for the bike lanes is that it be partially removed and a new shimmy route be put out for consultation. The Glenroy link is still a priority and has always been something that I support. Now, the overwhelming evidence indicates the current bike route is not only unsafe, but is also overwhelmingly not supported. What I am in support of is a safer alternative for bike users. I'm voting for safety and for safe bike routes in Merri-bek. The current route is not supportive of less confident bike riders, and we're talking about 300 metres for this particular section and the route, the shimmy route that is now proposed. The report also notes that even those who said they felt safe riding on Kent Road left negative feedback. The trial that has run for 2 years has overwhelming negative feedback. It is not supported by bike riders, residents, the supporting clubs, the neighbouring medical centre and the local MPs, particularly Anthony Cianfloni. The current design itself is highly problematic, where it ends at a roundabout on Kent Road, which is highly difficult to navigate and feeds into a much busier intersection of Kent Road and is not protected. The current route requires bike riders to negotiate shared traffic lanes on busy roads at 4 roundabouts. And we've got evidence about how dangerous roundabouts are to bike users. On Derby Street alone and one on Kent Road, there were 3 on Derby Street and 1 on Kent Road. We know the risks of roundabouts for bike riders, that's well documented. There's over 1,500 vehicles per day, and this is a complete lot of examples of separated bike lanes with two-way traffic flow when there is over 1,000 vehicles per day. Kent Road and Derby Street have higher traffic volumes, which make the current bike route inherently unsafe. By comparison, the alternate shimmy route flows back into streets which have lower speed and lower volume of cars. It utilises pedestrian-operated signals to cross Cumberland Road and Gaffney Street. And this one roundabout avoids all other roundabouts except for one, which has planned improvement works anyway. I was the only councillor who attended and rode the new route, the new shimmy, the new Pascoe shimmy.
Councillor Davidson, if you could just, your last sentence, please.
Yep, I'm now winding up.
Thanks.
And I'm not a confident bike rider, but I managed the new route well. I didn't need to navigate the dangers of 4 roundabouts on busy roads. And this was a trial, and it's been trialled for over 2 years. It's unsafe. The feedback and the empirical evidence says it with no doubt or uncertainty. The importance of the connection between Coburg and Glenroy remains and the forthcoming work to consult with the community regarding the Pascal shimmy should begin.
Thanks,
And I
Councillor
cannot
Davidson.
ignore a report that says it's unsafe.
Thanks, Councillor Davidson. I'll see if there are any other speakers in favour of this. Do any other councillors feel the need to contribute to this debate?
No, I'm just pointing out that there's no report in front of us, so it's really hard to make affirmative actions and decisions without a report.
Right, thanks. Thanks, Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Yildiz?
I just want to leave with one thing. 2 nights after the vote, I actually attended.
Councillor Yildiz, are you sorry?
Sorry,
Are you
2 nights-
speaking?
No, I just want to make a comment because I haven't contacted our governance yet. But 2 days after that vote, I went to Fawkner Police Station to lodge a complaint about death threats. So. Forget about the social media. Just go to my Twitter and have a look at the threats on there. So when people say, "Oh, nothing happened on social media," I haven't even gone to governance because I think I'm bigger and.
Councillor Yildiz,
Anyway,
can I just?
so
I
when
can
people say,
appreciate-
and they're from
All right.
cyclist groups, by the way.
Okay, Councillor Yildiz, I can appreciate the concerns that you've raised, and I can appreciate that you've followed them up, and the concerns that this discussion has raised for some people. However, we've got this particular motion before us tonight. We really need to make a vote on it. And as I've said, if there are things that are being said, that breach our code of conduct, please raise that internally because we don't want this unsafe work environment. So please raise it internally if there are councillor code of conduct issues. But for this evening, I'll see if there are any other councillors who feel as though they need to contribute to this debate. If not, I will ask Councillor Conlon to exercise his right of reply within 2 minutes. We will vote on this, and then given the nature of this debate, I'll move that we have a 5-minute adjournment so that we can take some time and that we can come back and get through the rest of our agenda for this evening. So, Councillor Conlon, do you wish to exercise your right of reply?
No, I think we've had a lot of debate, so happy to put it to vote.
All right, so we're going to put this one to the vote. So all those in favour of this motion that is up on the screen, that is 5. All those against this motion that is up on the screen, that is... Councillor Tapanos, do you wish to stick your hand up? Okay, all right. All right, so that's 4 that are against, 1 abstention. I'm using my casting vote, so that motion has been carried. I'll call for a division if that's... I presume councillors would like that. So all those in favour were Councillor Bolton, Councillor Pulford, Councillor Conlon, Councillor Riley and myself. All those against are Councillor Yildiz, Councillor Hart, Councillor Davidson, Councillor Pavlidis and Councillor Tapanos is an abstention. We're going to, I'll see if I've got a seconder for us to move to have a 5-minute adjournment, just so we can take some time. All right, okay, we're fine to power on through it. All right, I'm going to move that we have a 5-minute adjournment. Councillor Hart to second it. All those in favour? All right, that's a majority of hands. Let's take 5 minutes and we'll come back to go through the rest of our items for this evening. everyone for bearing with us with that adjournment. So we're just going to get. Oh, she can come back in when she chooses. We're just going to get on with the meeting. So
She needs to be explained right.
all right, you can do that. So we're going to continue on with the council meeting for this evening, and as requested, we're going to bring back up item 7.9. So that is the proposed sale of the former Glenroy Library at 737 Pascoe Road, Glenroy. I'll see if there's any conflicts of interest for councillors to disclose. No, if not, do I have a mover? Any councillor wishes to move this motion? 7.9. Councillor Riley to move. Do we have a seconder? So this is 7.9, the proposed sale of the former Glenroy Library at 737 Pascoe Road, Glenroy. We've got Councillor Riley as the mover, Councillor Tapanos as the seconder. Councillor Riley, do you have anything to add? Oh, sorry, do you wish to speak on this item?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Look, this is an important step. We've gone through public process to consider this, and I know there's other feedback that's come out during the process, which is really important, that we listen to that and consider it. However, I think at the end of the day, we've got a large debt that we ran up building and constructing and rolling out Glenroy Hub, which is a purpose-built, passive design building. It's the first public building of its type, and many of the locals are loving it and fall in love with it when they go there. So I think to help us pay the debt down for that, it was always envisaged, or at least was certainly a very serious option before us as governors to actually consider the sale of that land, because we're essentially invested in other land to allow that facility to be built for the people of Glenroy. So I think it's a judicious decision, and it's a sensible one in the current climate financially that we're in. And as other needs arise in Glenroy, we can look at those and consider them in the medium and longer term to be able to provide for that community as it grows and changes. So I think this is a very prudent way to go. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Riley. Councillor Tapanos as the seconder.
Yes, just to say that we've got a strategic plan to renew a lot of our infrastructure.
Unmute yourself, please.
Sorry. Just to say that we often plan facility improvements, infrastructure improvements, things such as the library and community centre, which has been a big objective for Glenroy. These things are not easy to finance. We come up with very innovative ways to do that, which includes loans, it includes saving money over numerous years, but it also includes sometimes selling assets to rebuild and buy other things. And that's exactly what's happened here. The intention always was to sell, to finance the Glenroy Community Centre. And now we've come to sort of a full circle and to the end of that decision. And we're basically putting this up for sale. And it is to pay off the loans, effectively, of the money that went into the community centre.
Thanks, Councillor Tapanos. Are there any speakers against this motion? Any other speakers in favour? Oh, sorry, was in favour or against? Or just in general? All right, Councillor Hart. Just, yeah, you're unmuted. Great.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I understand the logic and the reasons behind the decision for the sale of the library. Councillor Davidson and I both attended the submissions hearing, and that was, I think, a privilege to do, to be able to hear the submissions from community. And I know we have some members who did a wonderful, wonderful submission and presentation to us at that submission. And I think it opened up for us some of the depths. There were other groups there who also wanted to see the building retained by council for community use, either as a museum or for service clubs or some integrated measure. There were also people who made submissions about the importance of that land for housing in particular, for even for not even, but for social housing, particularly given it's very central transport route. And I actually understand, I think, all of those submissions in different ways. On the other hand, I guess the other part of council is weighing that up about the repayment of the debt, which is not insignificant. The future that we've got ahead, I think, with a lot more tighter budgets in the future than what we've been having to date. So I understand the support for the officer's recommendation. I'm sorry that we don't, I think at this point, have a vision of how we would aptly use that site at the moment, although there was, I think, potential being offered to us in those submissions. So I would be supporting the officer's recommendation tonight, but recognise some of the difficulty. And I think more importantly that it was a genuine process of consultation to hear what options were there. And I think we seriously have to think about obviously the needs of Glenroy and some of the issues that were raised at the submissions hearing, so we can think and plan into the future. The idea I didn't mention, sorry, was performance art. That's the other, as a venue in the north. That was another issue that's sort of in the future planning for the north. But I think at the moment what's the driving imperative, I think, is around driving down some of that debt, so that I think then we can move forward with other future ventures. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. I'll see if there are any speakers against this motion. Any other speakers in favour of this motion, or just speaking on it generally? Yep.
I've been weighing this up. I know I was on council when we decided to sell the library in the past in order to help fund the Glenroy Community Hub. And, the Glenroy Community Hub, we never got any funding from the state or federal government. It had to be entirely from ratepayers' money, loans, and also the sale of this building. So I'm well aware of that. But, I did sort of get a little bit pulled up by some of the submissions, in particular the Turkish Museum and the role of the Turkish community in the in Merri-bek, especially the northern part of Merri-bek, Coburg, Glenroy, the first Turkish mosque in Coburg, but as the community grew and spread up towards Glenroy and Broadmeadows area. But also just sort of thinking about the fact that there's not really, in terms of public buildings, in the centre of Glenroy, because actually the Glenroy Community Hub is sort of off to the side of the centre of Glenroy. It's not right in the heart of Glenroy. And so, I do sort of feel a bit sorry about losing something right in the heart of Glenroy. I know some people found the old library much easier to get to than the new library. Anyway, I'm sort of thinking of abstaining.
Thanks, Councillor Bolton. I'll see if there are any other speakers on this item. Councillor Davidson?
Yeah. Just briefly, and in line with Councillor Hart, I would like to thank those who came and submitted their ideas for the venue. I think that, and I encourage you to continue to work with council officers, and I have spoken to council officers at a briefing about assisting with your future endeavours. The Turkish Museum, the Rotary Club. I've got a very special place in my heart for the Rotary Club, who was displaced from their previous location when the Glenroy level crossing removal works took place. That was very unfortunate, and they are yet to find a suitable place to operate from. So I'm looking forward to assisting both all the submitters who came on the evening about finding different locations to operate their community works from, because they are vitally important. And tonight I will be supporting the sale of the old Glenroy Library. And that has a lot to do with financial reasons as well, because as Councillor Bolton said, there was no funding granted from any other level of government to assist, the federal government to assist us with the construction, which is disappointing. And our rates and efforts have gone entirely into the new library, which is a wonderful space. And although the new library may be harder to reach for some, it may be easier to reach for others, and that's just the nature of change. But thank you for your submissions and the heartfelt work that you continue to do.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Davidson. Are there any other speakers on this item? Councillor Conlon?
Yeah, also just want to, I will speak in favour of it. And just want to outline why. So obviously we're selling a piece of a council asset, a piece of council land, the old Glenroy Library. And I usually would not support selling off public assets, but the reason I would do in this case is because this is directly funding the creation of a new council asset in the form of the Glenroy Hub. So yeah, I think it's part of the reason as to how we were able to deliver the Glenroy Hub. So for me, I don't see that this as a form of privatisation or land or asset sell-off. It's part of sort of cycling assets, existing council assets. So for that reason, I'm happy to sell it in order to fund the other council asset that we've produced here.
Thanks, Councillor Conlon. If that's it in terms of speakers, we might put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? One abstention. All right, great. So that has been carried. Would you like
an abstention?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want that noted?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was carried with Councillor Bolton as an abstention. Okay, so now we scroll back up. Sorry, everyone. All the way back up to item 7.3. Now, it is 9:20 and we've got a lot of items to get through, so I'll encourage councillors to keep their contributions to the point, please. So item 7.3 is the 2022 to 23 Merri-bek City Council Annual Report. Are there any conflicts to disclose? No? If not, I would like to move this report as the Mayor and just say that, you know, on the whole, it has been a really good year for our council. As councillors and as staff and as community members, and we've all worked really, really hard to achieve some really wonderful outcomes across the community. You know, we've completed the name change process, we've built really great, amazing new facilities, and we've come together as a community to, I guess, you know, come back in a post-ish COVID world. So some of the biggest things that are highlighted within this annual report to be proud of are the fact that we've been delivering on significant projects, including the Faulkner Leisure Centre, which is a $36 million redevelopment. We've begun construction on the $29 million cultural and community hub at 33 Saxon Street in Brunswick. And we've also had the redevelopment of Fleming Park in Brunswick East, and that was part of the $9.8 million master plan refresh of the site. And there'll also be a community event there this Saturday morning celebrating the opening of that site. We've also, something that I'm quite proud of, have been delivering on creating a sustainable future. And, you know, we've been really continuing and expanding the rollout of our rooftop solar systems on homes and helping people who, you know, are on a lower income create a more environmentally friendly and more financially friendly home for themselves to live in. We've also secured $500,000 through the federal government towards creating a community battery in Brunswick. And so through this project, which is still in early stages and will be part of the first lot of councils being part of this, you know, we're aiming to improve network conditions, helping reduce energy bills, and encouraging more residents to install solar panels. So this is still a moving space, but one that we're quite proud to have been part of. And just lastly, there's so much more that is outlined within that report, but something that I'm really proud of having pushed for quite hard within the budget process was on our tree planting work. And so I'm pleased to share that over the next 4 years, we've almost doubled our tree planting budget by around $1.5 million. And so we've planted 5,469 trees in the past year, which is an increase of 30%. So those are, I guess, some really high-level highlights from our annual report. I encourage everybody to read it to see just how much we are doing. There is a lot that is constantly happening in terms of services and infrastructure and advocacy and everything. So I really encourage people to read the report and give us any feedback that they might have. Now, I realise I didn't actually ask for a seconder, which I should have done. So Councillor Hart to second. Councillor Hart, do you wish to add anything? Great. Are there any speakers against this report? Any other speakers on this report? If not, we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? That has been carried. I presume so. Yeah. All good. All right, so 7.4 is the draft homelessness strategy. Any conflicts of interest, councillors? If not, is there a mover? Councillor Hart to move. A seconder? Councillor Bolton to second. Councillor Hart?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'll be brief. I was the person.
Oh, your mic, sorry, Monica.
Yeah, I had submitted the notion of motion for the council to develop a homelessness strategy, policy strategy. I guess when I first came to council, I was really aware that we didn't have one, and that just sort of came about accidentally, where there was issues of when people were sleeping rough, and I think there were moves to get police to move them, and I started then to having discussion with officers about, well, what's the policy? And I realised there was no official policy, although homelessness was very much linked into the affordable housing sort of policy area. And then again, in the budget process, we, as council, took a decision to fund a position for an assertive homeless outreach worker, which I think is a very good initiative. But it also said to me there needs to be somewhere that this position, well, somewhere that I think anchors that position, and it's anchored within, to me, a homeless strategy. This strategy, I think, at the moment is a very, very broad one, and I know the officers would say the same. It's in, I guess, an early stage of development. The policy at this point sort of echoes some of the principles. It echoes some of the work that council's already doing. It references a functional zero program, which is really a community program of providers who work together, really understanding, particularly focusing on rough sleepers, who's sleeping rough, really trying to link into supports, which there's a deficit of, we know that. So it picks up on some of that work, and I hope that with the position that we've created, I hope that through consultation with that, it may give us room and data and an understanding of other ways we can expand on this policy. It's actually going out for quite a long time. It's going out to the community up to a period of February, because what officers acknowledge, they want to do a lot of more consultation, not just with community, but with community groups around the policy, which also gives us opportunities for input. It also went to the Affordable Housing Reference Group, and I'm assuming it will come back there. So this is really, I think, at the beginning of its life. And there's often a question of what's the role for local government with respect to homelessness, and I think it helps define and understand, particularly because it's local council who does all the work, particularly with rough sleepers. But it's certainly homeless policy, it has to extend far more beyond rough sleepers. So I really commend this one and actually really acknowledge that it's a beginning of the process.
Great.
And thank officers for the work and the time in putting into this. I know it was on top of other work, so thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Councillor Bolton as a seconder.
Yes, I didn't have time to prepare an amendment prior to this meeting, but I hope when the council officers go out to public consultation about this, that also, as well as dealing with the housing issue, there's some discussion about making social and public places more welcoming, and also because I did move a motion a few years ago against a council using any hostile architecture, which might make, it's a term where businesses or councils or governments makes public spaces uncomfortable, so that people who, not just rough sleepers, but people who might spend a lot of their time in the streets are uncomfortable and so forced to or constantly move. So I certainly hope that maybe council officers look at that issue, because you know, we definitely did have an issue in Coburg where the seats outside the Coburg Library was made more uncomfortable for people. So yeah, anyway, I'm really hoping councillors look at that issue in amidst everything else, because I think it's not mentioned in the homelessness strategy.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Bolton. Are there any other speakers on this item? Councillor Conlon?
Yeah, also happy to have this report and policy come to council. I also strongly support or not support council employing or engaging the police to move on rough sleepers. I know it's a tricky issue, but I don't think involving the police in homelessness ever helps the situation. So, and also, as Councillor Bolton said, also don't support hostile architecture. But yeah, so I don't think that policy that's outlined in this policy, but just want to make that comment.
Thanks, Councillor Conlon. Any other contributions in this debate? If not, we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Next is 7.5, the National Housing and Homelessness Plan submission. Any conflicts of interest to disclose? If not, I'll have a mover. Oh, sorry. Okay, so a mover?
Yep.
Yep, so, yep, Councillor Hart to move. Okay, yep. Who wishes to second that motion? Councillor Pulford to second. Councillor Hart, as a mover, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, just briefly. This is a submission that is from Council. It's to the National Housing and Homelessness Plan. It's an issues paper the federal government have started on housing and homelessness in Australia as part of their federal strategy around, it's basically to inform housing and homelessness in Australia over the next 10-year plan. The submission has been put forward through Council largely through the Affordable Housing Action Plan process. I just want to say I think it's a good submission that's been put forward. I know the submission came to the Affordable Housing reference group for consultation, and I think, you know, I think it was Councillor Conlon said, well, tonight's the night for transport. I think there's 4 items on the agenda tonight for housing, which I think also shows the urgency and the crisis that we're in, 2 from councillors and 2 from council officers here. I probably just want to, and so I think in some ways, in bureaucratic language, this report manages to say some of the same things that I think are perhaps said a little bit more stridently by both Councillor Bolton and Councillor Conlon in their motions tonight. But it certainly, I think, and I want to say that the report references the importance of public and community housing, so not just using the term social housing, but differentiating between the two and acknowledging the importance of public. It also recognises the importance of public housing being refurbished, not just knocked down and not just substituted. And I think that's a really important point. I mean, federal government is certainly talking about local government being at the table in discussions around future housing plans, but the report's really calling for local government to have more than just a seat at the table, but to be really able to access funds and to really be able to really facilitate outcomes in local communities. The other thing the report does is talk about mandatory contributions in the planning scheme around affordable housing, not just the piecemeal sort of bargaining process that is there at the moment. The other strength of it, it talks about the need for emergency accommodation. Governments have really moved away from funding crisis accommodation And the fact that the report really drives that home, I think, is another really good point. And also local governments playing a role, particularly in looking at housing outcomes for First Nations people. So I think it covers quite sharply and very strongly a lot of key issues that really need to be raised with the federal government. I think we as councillors often address those same issues in a different way. So I think it shows, you know, a coalescing between what councillors are reflecting here in the chamber and what's also being reflected by council officers. So I certainly,
Thanks.
endorse this
Thank-
for approval tonight.
Great. Thanks, Councillor
It's a job
Hart.
well done by the officers.
Great. Councillor Pulford is the seconder. Anything to add? Great. Any speakers against this? An amendment? Yep. Let's check what that is.
On the screen?
Yep. So this amendment was circulated to councillors.
Yeah.
Great. We'll get that on the screen and we'll see if it's acceptable to the mover and the seconder.
And actually, I just realised there's one extra point. It
What?
needs-
All right. Great. Councillor Hart, is that acceptable to you? All right. So
yes, I
just
think
for the
that would be-
context of the gallery, it's adding in the words that the planning system should be used to bolster the delivery of social and affordable housing that is affordable in perpetuity through mandatory contributions by landowners and developers. That's for the benefit of the gallery. Councillor Pulford is the seconder. Is that acceptable? Great. So if there's no speakers against that, I'll see if there are any other speakers in favour of this item. If not, we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? That has been carried. Next is 7.6, safety issues on Melville Road between Victoria and Albion Streets in Brunswick West. Any conflicts of interest to disclose? If not, can I please have a mover? Do we have a... Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right, Councillor Riley to move. Do we have a
And
second?
I'm happy to move. Mayor, just so I can be clear, there's an amendment that's come through. I'm happy to include the
Right.
amendments. I think it was from Councillor Conlon. Yeah.
Yep. So, Councillor Conlon, do you wish to second it if... Yes. Yes. So, all right. So, Councillor Riley will be moving a previously circulated amended version of this motion. We'll get that one up on the screen and Councillor Conlon will be seconding that. Councillor Riley, do you wish to speak on this item?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Just to say that the points 4 and 5, which are the new points, courtesy of Councillor Conlon here, I'm sure he'll like to speak to these, but just so the people following is about getting extra bike hoops along Sydney Road. About 200 of those.
So, Councillor Riley,
also-
Councillor Riley, just to clarify, we're up to 7.6, so that's safety issues on Melville Road between
beg your
Victoria and
pardon,
Albion
I jumped
Streets.
ahead.
That's all right. So that one will come up in a
sorry.
sec.
Thank you.
Do you wish to
No,
still?
so it's, yes, but I'll just go to that. So it's just to amend the point that starts to address the recorded crashes that were a result of drivers failing to give way to pedestrians crossing Melville Road at Hope Street. So to include the words at Hope Street and then install 2 flashing LEDs. And then after approaching the intersection to adjust traffic signal phasing at the intersection to facilitate an early head start phasing for pedestrians on the east-west crossings.
Great. Okay.
Thanks. So with that there, I'm more than happy to support this recommendation from the officers and commend them on the work they've done on this. The number of deaths that have happened in and around this area are very significant, particularly for pedestrians. And the recommendations in this report actually go some way to addressing that. I won't deal with them all, but they are some really strong suggestions to the Department of Transport and Planning who need to deal with this arterial road and to get some improvement there to avoid accidents, firstly, but also to reduce the number of deaths, which are quite significant. And at the moment, Merri-bek is running very high in the leader stakes for the number of pedestrians who are dying on our streets. And this is a really important piece of work, along with the other work that we're doing in making our streets more livable for people to walk, ride, skate and other things. So I just want to endorse this and thank the officers for their work on it.
Thanks, Councillor Riley. Councillor Conlon as a seconder. Anything to add?
No, it's just, that my amendment is, so basically this report has looked at the safety issues along Melville Road and found that there's been a lot of accidents or crashes, and a lot of them have involved drivers hitting cars, especially when they're crossing the road on the green pedestrian signal. So yeah, very concerning. I didn't realise that there was this many casualties across Merri-bek. Like I said before, it's 123. So it's quite a lot, and that's only since between 2020 and 2022. So it's really, really serious. We have a really serious road safety issue here in Merri-bek. But because this Melville Road is a state road, it means that council can't really do anything to physically change the street. That's a state government responsibility. So there's a series of advocacy suggestions in this report that council asked the Department of Transport to implement, which they rarely do, but we have to give it a go.
Thanks, Councillor Conlon. Any speakers against this? Any other speakers on this item? Councillor Tapanos, unmute yourself.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors, and thank you, officers, for this report. It's a very good one, and it's investigated a lot of the issues that the notice of motion that moved back in April asked to be investigated, and I'm really pleased about that. Of course, this all came about because there was a tragic accident on Hope Street and the pedestrian crossing. I guess particularly with the amendment that's been incorporated, one of the quite significant elements is this changing the sequencing of the traffic lights to give pedestrians a few extra seconds to cross, and feel that if that's implemented, that would go a long way to making the pedestrian crossing itself a lot more safer, as well as the additional flashing elements of the give way signs. So we need to acknowledge that unfortunately this advocacy has come because of a tragic accident, and we need to be proactive around our city to improve traffic safety. But we really hope that all of these will be seriously investigated by the department and implemented. They're not great sort of expenditure items. Sequencing lighting and putting in some flashing lights are very minimal things that could occur very quickly without needing to go through a large state government bureaucracy and budgetary programs. So I'm hoping that we will get some progress. And I haven't spoken to the family directly, but I know from the Brunswick Residents Network that I had spoken to the family that they very much welcome these changes, and that they're pleased that council is taking this advocacy position, and they told me to pass that on.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Are there any other speakers on this item? If not, we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? That has been carried. Item 7.7 was the revitalisation of Sydney Road. Any conflicts to disclose? No, I have Councillor Pavlidis with her hand up. That's, I presume, to move the motion. Yep, and Councillor Tapanos to second. Can I confirm that's the officer recommendation? Yep, all right. Councillor Pavlidis, as the mover, do you wish to speak on this? Yep, all right. Yep.
Thank you, and I'll be very brief. Firstly, I want to thank the officers for putting all this together. We now have a consolidated document that for improving the amenity and appearance of Sydney Road corridor from Brunswick all the way up to Coburg. I acknowledge that Sydney Road is a declared arterial road, which means that as council, our influence is limited to footpath and supporting businesses and building owners to present high quality shop fronts and building facades to the public realm. Nevertheless, the options put forward in the report take all this into account and recognise Council's existing works program and resourcing. It goes without saying that additional funding and resourcing is required to deliver the proposed options. A successful revitalisation of Sydney Road will result in a positive economic impact for our city. So I therefore encourage councillors to support the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Pavlidis. Councillor Tapanos as the seconder.
Again, I wanted to express my thanks to the officers and to Councillor Pavlidis, because this is sort of work has emerged from a walk down Sydney Road that we took together with the officers, where we just noticed that there is so much things that have never been removed in many respects. Old signs off buildings, other pieces of furniture on the road that's kind of redundant. And the ultimate objective here is to green Sydney Road, to put in some pot plants and some greening and some trees. We've spoken about that many times over the years, but the first and most critical step towards it is what we'll describe as a bit of a decluttering exercise, a bit of an audit of Sydney Road to work out how we can create space to put in more furniture, and I know there's an amendment coming for more bicycle hoops, but to put in more furniture and to put in some greenery as well. And we can't have everything. It's a very narrow, small footpath up and down Sydney Road, and it's competing with recycling bins and rubbish bins and signs and poles and goods from traders who put them out there. So, what this report is really doing, that I think is a great piece of work, is doing an audit of how we can get greenery and trees into Sydney Road, how we can get more cycling hoops into Sydney Road, how we can get more furniture into Sydney Road without creating more clutter. So compressing it all in a way that will make the footpath work. I'm hoping that it will also look at redundant signs that are hanging off our historical facades, because I see signs on there from the 1970s that have never been removed, and I think they do detract from our historical facades. So I hope that that could be a piece of work that occurs with this as well. And of course, we're not just doing things into the future, we're doing things immediately. So you would see here that there is some money being reinvested into clean-up and graffiti removal and things that we could do tomorrow, basically, on Sydney Road to make it a more pleasant environment for our residents and people who come to our city to shop.
Thanks, Councillor Tapanos. Any speakers against this motion? Any other speakers on this motion? Councillor Conlon?
Just got some amendments.
Yep, we'll bring that up onto the screen and then we'll see if they're acceptable to the mover and the seconder. And so they were regarding
Bike hoops.
consideration of proactively putting in bike hoops as part of the transport strategy and action plan. So I believe they're up on the screen now. Councillor Pavlidis, as the mover, is that acceptable to you? I'll give you obviously a moment to read it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't actually see it. When was that circulated? Sorry, just so I can see it on my screen.
Well, there was 12 o'clock.
12 o'clock.
11:59 a.m.
11:59 a.m. today.
Okay.
Councillor Tapanos, you?
Yeah, I mean,
just a yes or no,
I
please.
know that it changes another strategy, another policy that's not before us, but yes,
Yes?
I'm happy
Okay.
to accept it.
Great. Councillor Pavlidis, are you open to accepting that?
I haven't received it, so I don't know. Can you just read it out? Sorry, it makes it easier just to read it out.
Yep, so I'll read it out. So it just adds dot point 4, notes that there are only about 200 bike hoops along the entire 4-kilometre stretch of Sydney Road from Brunswick Road to Bell Street, and adds a dot point 5, as part of the draft transport strategy and action plan, considers an action for adopting a proactive approach to identifying gaps in the bicycle parking network and installing bike hoops in these gap areas, particularly in key destinations like Merri-bek's activity centres. Great. Okay, that is acceptable to both the mover and the seconder, so it becomes part of the substantive. So I will see if there are any other speakers on this item. Councillor Bolton? Yep.
I'd just like to say it's great that Councillor Pavlidis organised this motion or the report and the original notice of motion, because I think this is, I think a lot of people will really welcome this. I think a lot of people feel that Sydney Road strip has become a bit run down, and I think, I think
Can't hear a word.
I think there are certainly people who've contacted me who would really welcome a sort of uplift to Sydney Road. So I'd just like to congratulate you for taking the initiative with starting work along this line. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Bolton. If there are no other contributions in debate, I'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Next is 7.8, the proposed naming of Service Street Park in Coburg. Voting poll. Any conflicts of interest? No. Do we have a mover? Councillor Pulford to move. Anyone to second? No. Councillor Hart to second. Councillor Pulford?
Yeah, this will be brief. We are setting up a new park in Service Street in Coburg, and we're asking residents, so it's at 4143 Service Street, we're asking residents to choose between two names, Merri-bek and Delang. You can do so, you can give us your feedback on what you think the park should be made on our website, and then we'll get a report with those results and we'll pick a name for the park at a future council meeting.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Pulford. I see Councillor Pavlidis, you've got your hand up. Is that for a question? Yep, Councillor Pavlidis.
Through you, Mayor, just a question of clarification.
Yep.
On item number 6, financial and resource indications, it says the cost will be $3,500 plus GST for the long-term use of the name. Can someone define what long-term means? Is it 5 years, 10 years, 20 years?
Yep.
What is it?
All good. We'll go to the relevant acting director on that one then, Sunny.
Through you, Mayor, my understanding is that it is for the foreseeable future without an end date, but I might just clarify that and come back to you if that's okay, if you're happy for us to take that on notice.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sunny. Okay. So Councillor Hart as the seconder, do you wish to add anything? Nope. Any speakers against this motion? Any other speakers on this motion? If not, we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? That has been carried. We've already dealt with 7.9. So now we're up to 7.10. I will just flag, though, that it is 9:52. So if I could please get a motion just for us to extend the time to 10:30. Councillor Hart to move, Councillor Conlon to second. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. So 7.10 is the proposed sale of Unit 1, 6 Sutherland Street in Coburg. Are there any conflicts of interest to disclose? No. Councillor Conlon, I saw your hand up to move.
Yes.
And I'll just confirm what it is that you're moving, and then we'll make sure that you have a seconder.
It's moving, I think it's an alternative recommendation, which I've just circulated at 9:35. It's a later bit. I circulated earlier on, but long story short, I've needed to update it. So apologies for the late
Yep,
the
so
late
we'll
change.
get that one up on the screen. And if we'll scroll down, and so governance, if you're able to perhaps, is that it, Councillor Conlon?
Not quite.
No.
There was the one that I sent at 9:35 p.m. to everyone.
Yep, so there's additional words for governance following the struck out sentence. And that says, if an affordable housing option does not materialise, any proposal to sell the property will come to council for a decision.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, so we'll see if you've got a seconder for that. Councillor Bolton to second, Councillor Conlon as the mover.
Yep. So basically, this is a small unit that's owned by council up in Coburg. I won't go into the full detail, but essentially council has rented it out at a very low, I forget the rate, I think it's a very low rate or for free to a local resident for a complicated historical reason, which I won't go into, but it's a rare form of council-owned housing that is rented out to the community at a low rate. Not public housing, but council-owned housing. And so the person who was there passed away a while ago, and so council has then engaged in a process to have a community housing provider purchase the site. We are currently in negotiations with Aboriginal Housing Victoria, who may buy the site, but there's some uncertainties about that at this point. It looks like they may get it, but there's just a bit of delay in that. Basically, what I'm trying to do is I want to make sure that if that deal with Aboriginal Housing Victoria falls through, that the decision to sell the property off to the market comes back to council decision. I think they're very different decisions. Selling the property to a community housing provider versus selling it off to the market are different types of decisions, which I prefer council to have a say over or make a decision, especially if it's going to be sold onto the market.
Great, thanks, Councillor Conlon. Councillor Bolton as a seconder, is there anything to add?
Okay. I don't
Great.
need to add anything more.
Okay.
I just have a question.
Question from Councillor Hart. Yep, you're unmuted. Great.
Yeah, I just noticed that I'm going down to point 5B, and yeah, it's through the mayor, the question.
Yeah.
It says it's 8 months from the date from the 10th of May 2023. I guess my query is that whether that time frame needs to be extended at all. I hadn't realised it was May, not from now. That was all.
Great. Sunny, are you able to address that, please?
Through you, Mayor. So we did think 8 months would be enough for them to secure the funding that they need, but I think there would be no harm if you wanted to extend that to 12 months. That's certainly something you could consider.
All right, so, okay, I might move that as an amendment myself.
Yep.
And just see if that's acceptable to the mover and the seconder to extend it to 12 months.
Yep.
Okay, great. We'll get that up on the screen. Excellent. So, are there any speakers against this motion? Any other speakers on this motion? If not, we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? That has been carried. 7.11 is the proposed EOI for a cafe at 14 Frith Street in Brunswick. Any conflicts of interest to disclose? If not, can I please have a motion? Councillor Tapanos to move. Can you confirm what you're moving?
Yes, I have a motion as I believe it's circulated as additional dot points.
Check the screen.
Check the screen.
And you need to unmute yourself too.
Yes, dot point to what's listed in the agenda includes the parameters and some objectives around the expression process. And the one that I seconder.
Yep, speak closer to
Yeah,
that. I'll just see if there's a seconder. Councillor Riley's got his hand up to second. Councillor Tapanos, make sure you speak to the mic.
I'll speak generally. We purchased a property through our through our Park Close to Home program on Frith Street in Brunswick, an old textiles factory, and we've been in the process, and it's been subject to many reports in this chamber, of converting that to open space. One of the corners, so to speak, of the property is severely constrained through its heritage walls and so forth. And part of our plan from day one has been to have a commercial activity in that space, which is not just because of the constraint through the walls and the heritage preservation, but also provides coffee and something to eat and a place to go and sit down, and a lot of other, adds to the amenity of the new park that's being built. And I think that's really important. And many residents have said to me that, you know, it's great to be co-locating things in our parks so they can actually sit down, get a bite to eat, have a coffee. So this is a great addition. and we're seeking expressions of interest for people to tell us what they can do with this space. We want a business that's going to be financially viable, but we also want a business that is going to contribute to the park. And the additional amendment tonight is to also say that part of that contribution should be around providing a positive sort of amenity contribution and activation of the space. And what I mean by that is hopefully a business that might stay open beyond 3 o'clock, so we can actually get this passive surveillance in the park. A business that opens as late as possible means that there will be people in and around, and this passive surveillance I think is really important, specifically for this park, because it is a little bit a block away from Sydney Road. So overall, really exciting sort of progress, and I encourage you to spread the word, and if you know someone who wants to open up a restaurant or a coffee shop, let them know that this expression of interest is open, because we really hope we're going to get many, many submissions to pick from, and we want to pick the best one that's going to provide the best community benefit. Not just financial benefit, but the best community benefit.
Thanks, Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Riley is the seconder. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, briefly, just I don't think Brunswick needs another cafe, but I'm more than happy to see this being converted into something of great use to the community. So hopefully, if it is a cafe, there's going to be some fairly creative about how they use it. They might run some creative classes or art things, because they're in the creative area here, or at least the hub, not far from our arts and culture sector. So that could be something that someone might like to consider when they're expressing their interest, but it is a really important piece of the puzzle in terms of opening up public space. And while we had to invest a lot of money on this site because of the heritage values that Councillor Tapanos has mentioned, it's really, this will be a great addition to the old Fletcher Jones site, and the history and character of Brunswick with the textile and clothing and footwear that's gone on over the decades. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Riley. Are there any speakers against this motion? Any other speakers on this motion? If not, we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Next is 7.12, our draft asset management policy for public exhibition. Any conflicts to disclose? Do we have a mover? Councillor Pulford to move. Do we have a seconder? I'll second it. Oh, thanks, Councillor Hart. Councillor Pulford?
This is releasing our draft asset management policy out for community exhibition for 3 weeks. So have a look, give us some feedback. And just as a note, Council manages a portfolio of infrastructure assets worth approximately $2.1 billion. So it's a lot. But anyway, check it out and give us feedback if you have any.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Pulford. Councillor Hart as the seconder. Anything to add?
Just that I know officers have been working on this over quite a long period of time. I think it's quite comprehensive. It would be good to have any feedback about it. But yeah, it's already, I think, quite a solid document. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Any other councillors wishing to speak on this? If not, we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Next is 7.13, the draft lease and licence policy. Any conflicts of interest? Do we have a mover? Councillor Pulford to move. Anyone to second? Councillor Riley to second. Councillor Pulford.
Similar to the last item, this is releasing a policy for feedback from community. It's on a draft lease and licence policy. So please get in touch if you have feedback.
Thanks, Councillor Pulford. Councillor Riley as the seconder.
Nothing to add, thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Riley. Any other speakers on this? If not, we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? That has been carried. 7.14 is the adoption of Council's Governance Rules 2023. Are there any conflicts of interest to disclose? No, but I can see Councillor Pavlidis, you've got a hand up. Is that to move? No? Is that a conflict?
No, a motion to defer this to the next meeting, please.
All right, I'll see if you've got a seconder to defer this. Can we, to the next meeting? Can we defer it 2 times in a row? Because we did, yep, all right, cool. I'll see if you've got a seconder for that. Councillor Hart to second that. Okay, now we will put that to the vote then. So all those in favour of deferring item 7.14, our governance rules adoption. Fine, all right, all those against, that's been carried, so that'll be deferred to next month. Okay, 7.15 is the financial management report for the period ended 31st of August 2023. Any conflicts on this? No. Okay, so Councillor Tapanos to move, Councillor Pulford to second, Councillor Tapanos.
No, I think it speaks for itself.
Okay, Councillor Pulford. All right, next, sorry, we should probably vote on that. Any other speakers on this?
I'm just curious how it speaks for itself, sorry.
Because the words jump off of the page, that's how. Are there any speakers on this item? No, if not, we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Okay, 7.16 is the review of the instrument of delegation council to council staff. Any conflicts on this? Do we have a motion? Councillor Pulford to move, Councillor Tapanos to second. Councillor Pulford is the mover.
Yeah, we periodically update this instrument to delegate decision-making power or implementation power to council staff. This one has some legislative provision updates, as well as changes to the positions or titles of different council staff as staff move on and staff roles change.
Thanks, Councillor Pulford. Councillor Tapanos, the words speak for themselves. Great. Okay, any other speakers on this item? No.
Move on and staff roles change.
Oh, Councillor Pavlidis, you may just need to mute yourself because I think we've got some delayed audio there. So if there's no other speakers on this item, we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. 7.17 is the Open Council Resolutions Report. Any conflicts of interest? No. Do we have a mover? Please. Councillor Tapanos to move, Councillor Conlon to second. Councillor Tapanos?
Yeah, just to say that it's great to get this report. It does sort of enable us to track on how we're going with implementations of resolutions, and I think it comes quarterly or something like that to this chamber. So I think it's great to see it, and it's there for everyone to see on our progress.
Great, thanks, Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Conlon is the seconder. Any other speakers on this item? If not, we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. 7.18 is our governance report, October 2023, cyclical report. Any conflicts of interest on this one? Nope, all right. Do I have a mover for this? Councillor Pulford to move, a seconder. Councillor Tapanos to second. Councillor Pulford?
Yeah, this is a standard recurring item on our agenda. Combines a bunch of things, has records of meetings, responses to questions taken on notice during our last council meeting. It approves Councillor Riley to attend the Melbourne Urban Agriculture Forum at the cost of $225 and has the Audit and Risk Committee summary of minutes from the 5th of September.
Great, thanks, Councillor Pulford. Councillor Tapanos as the seconder.
Nothing further.
It was muted, but nothing further.
Nothing further.
Great. Any speakers against this? Any other speakers at all? Nope. If not, we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. 7.19 is RFT-2023-468 Hoskin Reserve Civil Works and Landscaping Tender Award Report. Any conflicts of interest on this one? Do I have a mover? Councillor Davidson to move and a seconder. Councillor Tapanos to second. Councillor Davidson?
Just take the report as read.
Yep, Councillor
Likewise.
Tapanos. Take it as read. Okay. Any other councillors on this item? If not, we'll put that to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. 7.20 is Contract Extension State Purchase Contract SPC-2023-458 for the provision of natural gas large sites. Any conflicts on this? No. Do I have a motion? Councillor Pulford, I saw your hand up, and can I confirm what it is that you're moving?
Yeah, so the officer report with the fourth dot point that was circulated by Director Sue at 5:41 p.m. The fourth point just notes Council's current and continued efforts and investment to move its major gas-using facilities to electricity, including the current Faulkner Leisure Centre renewal, to help meet our carbon neutral targets.
Yep, I'll just correct that typo, meet our carbon neutral targets instead of out. Little one. Councillor Riley?
Happy to second.
All right.
Happy to second. Don't need to speak. Thanks.
Yep, Councillor Riley to second. Councillor Pulford, do you wish to speak to that?
Yeah, just noting that we are trying to shift off gas. We've made that decision at Faulkner, and this just helps us get, this contract allows us to leave whenever we want to, rather than being locked into many years of buying gas. So that's a good thing, I think, to be part of that. That means when we do finally transition off gas, we can just opt out of this contract and don't need to buy anymore.
Great, thanks. Councillor Pulford. Councillor Riley? No? All right. Are there any other speakers on this item? If not, we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Next is 7.21 RFT-2023-400 Hard Waste Collection Service. Any conflicts of interest to disclose? If not, do I have a mover? Councillor Pulford, a seconder. Councillor Hart. Councillor Pulford?
After we made a decision at the last meeting to stick with our current hard waste situation, this is just making the contract to make that happen.
Great, thanks. Councillor Pulford. Councillor Hart? Anything to add? No. All right. Any other speakers on this item? No. We'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? Yep, that's being carried. So now we're up to notices of motion. And so the first notice of motion that we have this evening is 8.1, opposed public housing demolitions. Are there any conflicts of interest for councillors to disclose? If not, we'll see if there's a mover. And sorry, that is actually yours. So Councillor Conlon, I'll just check what it is that you're moving and we'll get that up on the screen for everyone to see.
I have, so it's my motion with, I don't know if I can circulate the consolidated
my amendments?
Hey?
Have you included my amendments?
I'm happy to, yes.
All right, let's get
Okay.
something up on the screen and then we can just check.
So governance, there's two sets of amendments, one from Councillor Bolton, which adds some points to point 5, and then some from Councillor Pulford, which I think I circulated.
Yep,
which
so I think Councillor Pulford's ones are up on the screen and we'll
Yep.
just get Councillor Bolton's added there and we'll just double check with both of you that that is the motion that you wish to move as part of 8.1.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So that's Councillor Conlon to move that. Councillor Bolton, do you wish to second that?
Yeah, I'm happy to second.
Okay. Councillor Bolton to second. So, Councillor Conlon.
Yeah. So this is basically an advocacy or statement motion. Basically, I want us council to make a very strong statement that we oppose the demolition of public housing. So as we all know, the state government recently announced that they're going to demolish 44 public housing towers across the state and supposedly redevelop them into a mix of social and private housing. I think the point of my motion, and it's a bit different from Sue's, is to kind of make a clear statement about what is really going on here. And then Sue's motion will talk a bit more about the specifics about how to advocate for a better outcome. But essentially, the state government this is a move to privatise key pieces of publicly owned land across the city. It's a very tricky process. So they've done this across the state where they supposedly redevelop public housing, and then they introduce this very muddy term called a social or affordable housing, which is basically privatisation by stealth. They're not my words, they're the words of many housing advocates and legal experts who are watching this. The government has a terrible track record on redeveloping public housing. There's numerous sites listed in the background to my motion where the government basically demolishes the housing with either no plans to rehouse the people who live there, or vague and very extremely vague plans about how those people are going to get back. And there's data that suggests that around 80% of public housing tenants don't return to the sites after they're redeveloped, and we know that that's because the state government makes it impossible to do that, or impossible to navigate the bureaucracy that they put in place for those public housing residents. And this is relevant to Merri-bek because we have a public housing tower down at 351 Barclay Street in Brunswick, which is my ward, which has 116 residents living there. And that's included as one of the 44 towers that the government plans to demolish and privatise. So this is unbelievable that the government is doing this in the housing crisis when every single housing expert, almost from the whole political divide, is calling for more public housing, not less. Everyone recognises that the market is absolutely never going to solve this crisis and has no intention of doing so. So the fact that the government is proposing to demolish public housing, especially in this context, is just unconscionable, in my opinion.
Thanks, Councillor Conlon. Councillor Bolton as the seconder.
Yes, I'll speak in favour of this, but I just noticed one inaccuracy.
Yes.
Really, the term sell-off should be privatisation, because it's actually not actually a sell-off.
I'll see if that's...
It's privatisation through a leasing arrangement. Well, the majority of them are under this ground lease model.
Let's just technicality-wise.
Privatisation,
all right, let's just
accurate.
Park the back and forth. Just so, Councillor Bolton, as the seconder, you're not able to propose an amendment to that. So, all right. So, Councillor Pulford will propose the amendment to make it and privatise the majority of public housing at these sites. I'll presume that's acceptable to you. Councillor Conlon, that's acceptable to you too. Great. So now, Councillor Bolton as the seconder.
Thanks for that. It makes the motion more accurate. So I definitely support this motion. I think it is, if the government gets away with demolishing the 44 public housing towers, this could very well be the death knell for public housing in this state. And this is also a process which is happening in New South Wales as well as, it's happening all over the country. I mean, the ACTU has sold off a massive amount of its public housing. And this is what is one of the things which is making the housing crisis so much worse. So I definitely support this. My motion is a bit different because there's a lot of information which needs to be sought, and there is evidence in France. What they're doing is they're refurbishing these high-rise public housing towers. They're not actually demolishing them. I'll speak to that a little bit more in my motion. But basically, residents are being intimidated into leaving the public housing towers. There's been no evidence put forward which proves that these public housing towers are actually beyond their use-by date, and in fact, actually, evidence points to the fact that they're still structurally sound, or the vast majority of them are still structurally sound and could be refurbished. And really, this proposal, I think, is more about private developers getting their hands on public land in the inner city. If the demolition goes through of all of these public housing towers, it will be pushing poorer people and refugee and migrant communities out of the inner city. I think poorer people do have a right to be near social amenities rather than pushed to areas where there are no GPs that bulk bill. I mean, that's what's happened to some tenants who've been forcibly relocated already.
Thanks, Councillor Bolton. So I'll see if there's any speakers against this motion. Yes. Councillor Tapanos.
Thank you. Look, I don't know where to start. I guess maybe I should start with how the mover opened this discussion when he said, what is going on here? I'll tell you what is going on. The state government is renewing the public housing stock. It is building more public housing for our community to meet our demand. So despite everything that the mover and the seconder have said about people not being allowed to return, people, privatisations, everything we've heard, the actual outcome here is that we are taking, or the government is planning to take 44 towers, these towers that were built in the 50s and 60s, that are not up to standard, do not meet hardly any of the modern codes, including sustainable design, but also are not really adaptable for people with disabilities, do not have, in many cases, appropriate natural lighting, pretty much are deficient in any way, shape or form for modern living. It is taking these and it is renewing them. In the process of renewing them, it is constructing more dwellings that will be sold to pay for the renewal works. That's what's happening. More public housing in our community is what's happening, and new public housing. Refurbished, new apartments for people to enjoy. So what is really happening here is just politics. There are people here that are just playing politics with this issue because, you know, that's what they do and that's what they've done for Grand Place previously. What I want to say to some of the people who propose this motion is, have you actually surveyed the residents in that tower in Brunswick to see whether they want the refurbishment? Because you may find that the outcome is surprising to you. You might find that it is time for this to be refurbished, to be upgraded. And, you know, I hear statements, and this is why I say it's political. Oh, the government has a terrible track record. Really? How? I encourage my fellow councillors to come to Harvester Square, the former Grand Place, and have a look at the construction and go in and have a look at the dwellings that are built there and have a look at the development as a whole. And you would see that it is a vast, vast improvement to the rundown properties that were there 3 years ago. And 3 years ago, we were having the same debate about Grand Place. Because it was politics then, it's politics now. But the outcome is not to just say opinions like the state government has a terrible track record. Why don't you come to Harvester Square, organising the meeting? I'm sure our council officers can facilitate it. So you can actually see how a renewal project has taken these rundown, almost uninhabitable public housing dwellings in Grand Place and converted it to new modern developments, which meet modern living. Everything that we talk about.
Thanks, Councillor Tapinos. Last sentence.
Foreshadowing an alternative to this, to actually welcome the announcement, but also to work with the state government. Because what some of these councillors have not understood is that this is a residential zone, so there's a lot of issues around the development.
All right, thanks, Councillor Tapinos. You've well and truly hit time. We see that you foreshadowed an alternative, so save that for if this motion fails, please. All right, so I'll see if there are any other speakers in favour of this motion. Councillor Hart.
Yeah, it's like it beggars belief that this is sort of really a political question, because there is, if we look at the track record, let's talk about the track record of both governments. I think the track record of both governments in relation to housing, in relation to public housing, has been one of the most appalling things on record across Australia, but certainly across Victoria. It is why we have over 50,000 people on a wait list for public housing, because of the successive policy failure of both governments. And the policy failure was the notion that you leave housing to the market. And this is where it's got us. So while there might be some refurbishment projects that might be deemed okay, I think what you've got to look at is the bigger picture. And what you have got is a bigger picture of this. I see it, and I see it as part of my everyday my everyday work, which is why there is such a consensus, I guess, from people across experts in housing, people who are absolutely opposed to what's happening in relation to the 44 towers. And it's to people in the field, it spells the death knell of public housing. And that's precisely how it's seen. Because of all the issues that are raised, is you get a massive destruction of community. Very few people get back into those public housing. There are usually tremendous delays between when a project's knocked down, demolished, or people are exited. There are people waiting out there maybe 5-6 years who've never got back in, or their places aren't even on the road to being refurbished, rebuilt. So I think we need to understand the whole bigger picture here in what's happening. And I guess the level of opposition to this is quite high, because what you've seen is just a move for that land, that public land, now to be seen to be privatised off to, and people won't. The notion that we're actually creating more public housing is wrong. The figures show that it'll be the same number that get back. We're actually not creating more public housing, and many of them won't get back.
Thanks, Councillor Hart.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll see if there are any other speakers against this motion. If not, are there any other speakers on this motion? I would like to contribute to debate on this one. So I'll be speaking firmly in favour of this notice of motion. And I believe that this is an appropriate time for us as a council to be strong on a fundamental human rights and public policy question. So, the context around all of this is that the state government released their big housing statement a few weeks ago, which sets a goal of building 800,000 more homes over the next decade. This is the government's so-called housing centrepiece. But when you actually read the statement in all of its detail, it appears that the biggest winners aren't actually the 125,000 people that are stuck waiting on the public housing register. The government's plan to demolish and replace all 44 of the public housing towers in Melbourne by 2051, including the one in our municipality in Brunswick. There's no guarantee that those sites will remain as public housing. There will only be an additional 15 homes built per year at these sites. Reminder, we've got 125,000 people on this waiting list. There's no plan for where these current residents are expected to go during demolition. Again, we're in a housing crisis, so I'm not sure where they'll be going. And it's unclear if those residents would be able to return to the same sorts of apartments, the same sorts of homes, once the towers are reconstructed. Another major issue that we've heard coming out in recent days is that residents weren't told about the upcoming works until the media announcement, until they heard it through the news. So they were left concerned, confused, and cut out of any meaningful community engagement on this issue. The state government also claims that they need to demolish the towers because they're dilapidated and past their use-by date. And there might be some that are falling apart. But I think we need to be really upfront and say that we've had 9 years of a Labor government. So if there is public housing that is falling apart, it was the state government's job to make sure it didn't get to that stage in the first place. And it's also not actually settled that all 44 towers need demolition. Housing experts have said that the government could save millions of dollars if they renovated the existing stock and built infill in between existing buildings. And the fact is they did this in 2013 at the Atherton Gardens site. It is possible. Hovering above all of this, though, is the reality that the state government is pushing the narrative that councils are to blame for the current housing crisis. Apparently, we don't approve enough housing applications, and Merri-bek has been singled out for this in the past, in Parliament, in state Parliament. That's just not true. At Merri-bek, we've approved 86% of planning applications, and there have been more than 15,000 new dwellings built in our municipality in the past 5 financial years. There are, however, more than 980 planning permits throughout the municipality, equating to around 4,500 dwellings that are yet to commence, that have expired, or have been granted extensions. And this includes a site that Development Victoria, the state government's development arm owns and had actually earmarked for affordable housing. So in summary, I'm supporting this motion this evening, and I'm proud to stand firmly in solidarity with public housing residents and with all people who are living in housing instability. Housing is a human right, and I think this is the right time for us as a council to take a stand on this issue. So, I'll see if there are any other speakers against this item or anyone else on this item at all. If not, I will quickly move that we have an extension of time for half an hour that I hope we won't have to fully use. I'll move it. Councillor Conlon to second it. All those in favour? All those against? Great. If, Councillor Conlon, do you wish to exercise your right of reply? Thanks, Councillor Conlon. So we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? So that has been carried. Do you want a division on that one? Well, actually, I'll get... No. That would be a shock.
I like our position noted.
All right, so... Okay, so that has been carried with Councillor Tapanos voting against that. So we'll now move on to the next, our last item actually for the evening, which is 8.2, housing. And I'll just see if there's any conflicts of interest on this one. No, if not, Councillor Bolton, this is your motion. And I'll see if
Okay.
you've got a seconder. Councillor Conlon to second, Councillor Bolton. Was there any amendments to this one?
No.
Okay.
There are
ahead.
quite a few, I might go through the motion point by point because there's a number of elements which arise out of the state government's housing statement on the 20th of September. So firstly, wanting the council, and a lot of this is seeking information, wanting council to find out information from the state planning minister on what type of affordable housing a developer can include in order to bypass council and bypass third-party appeal rights. And under what circumstances can the planning minister waive the requirement for a developer to include affordable housing as a condition of bypassing council? So that's sort of quite important. That's being used as, affordable housing is being used as a means of saying it's okay for developers to bypass democratic processes and be fast-tracked. Then, with regard to the Minister for Housing, council needs to find out what is known about public housing in Glenroy that is being decommissioned in Hilda Street, and I think the other one might be Daly Street. So I'd like to know, is this going to continue to be public housing in the future? Is it just being flogged off? What exactly is happening with this public housing? Also, wanting to find out whether public housing redevelopments will be public housing or private housing or privately owned. Now, the government's been a bit slippery in just talking about social housing. So with the public housing towers, it's not clear whether or not the social housing means public housing or community housing or a mixture of both. We know it includes mostly privately owned dwellings. And then the most important point is to abandon plans to demolish the towers and instead use the retain, repair and reinvest model, which is being used in France, where public housing towers similar to our own are being renovated without tenants being forced to move out. And this, under what's happening in France, is very important because tenants only have to move out for 3 or few days or 3 days or a few days while their flats are being renovated. And they've been turning dark and dingy flats into sunlight-filled flats and making them accessible and even putting balconies on the outside. So there is an alternative to just demolishing these towers. And this is really important because research has shown that when communities are forcibly dislocated, that it takes years off people's lives. And this is the research. Also, to cease plans to use a ground lease model to privatise public land that public estates are built on. And lastly, well, I'll leave the rest of it.
Thanks, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Conlon as the seconder.
Nothing further to add, yeah. I think this motion adds a lot of more detail and sort of clear actions for council to do. So
Great.
Fully support.
Thanks, Councillor Conlon. Are there any speakers against this motion? Any other speakers in favour of this motion? Councillor Hart? Just unmute yourself. Thanks.
Yeah, look, I'm very much in favour of the practical suggestions that are in Councillor Bolton's resolution. I also just wanted to say that, you know, these two when we look at these two resolutions combined, each a little bit unique in their own way. But when I moved the National and Housing Homelessness submission that was put in by our own council, or is being put forward that we voted on tonight, I just want to read out one paragraph to the benefit of Councillor Tapanos if he wants to listen. While many new affordable homes are needed, there is an urgent need to make healthy and safe the existing ageing public housing stock. Both retrofitting and new builds, there's room for new builds, present an opportunity for the Commonwealth and state and territory governments to meet net zero targets. So our own policy actually reflects a position of supporting refurbishment. It's not in contradiction to new builds, but what we're talking about is very consistent with that. So yeah, that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Are there any other speakers on this item? No, if not, we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? Councillor Tapados, what are you deciding to do? An abstention. All right, we'll get that noted for the minutes. So that is it in terms of notices of motion. We will go all the way back up to the confirmation of minutes of our previous meeting, as we did move that around. So bear with me whilst I scroll. So item 3 is confirmation of minutes of previous meeting. Now, Eve, can I just confirm now what is up on the screen to confirm? Thanks. Wait, I'll just let Eve go. And then we'll go to Councillor Pavlidis' question.
So, councillors, what you have up on the screen tonight for consideration is to confirm the minutes of the 13th of September council meeting. And in confirming the minutes, we will update the proposed minutes that have been circulated to confirm that the motion that is in those minutes has been rescinded, and we will also reinstate all meeting procedures from that meeting under that item.
Okay, thank you, Eve. I see Councillor Pavlidis has got her hand up with a question.
Yes, and clarification basically.
Yeah.
Because I'm questioning how this can be done. And I'll read our governance rules. The minutes of a meeting must contain detail of the proceedings and resolutions made, be clearly expressed, be self-explanatory, and incorporate relevant reports or a summary of the relevant reports considered in the decision-making process. Specifically, so to report 7.1 on Kent Road bike trails, Governance Rule 3.11.11 F, G and H, the council minutes in relation to 7.1 does none of that.
All right.
Therefore, the minutes need to be rectified so they can be a true and accurate record of what occurred. So,
all right, so can I...
Basically, I'm just like, so I need to ask the CEO a question here.
All right, yes.
I need to ask a question here. I'm struggling to understand how the Chief Executive Officer can accept a notice of rescission on report 7.1 when there is no minute recording what the council decision was on report 7.1. So what are we rescinding?
All right, Councillor Pavlidis, we've already made the decision on that. I'm just going to go straight to Kathy. Hang on, don't interrupt me. We're going to Kathy just to answer your question, and then we'll, you know, if if you actually have an amendment or an alternative, move that. And if not, we're going to see if we have a mover and a seconder for the minutes. Kathy, could you please address what Councillor Pavlidis has raised?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Pavlidis, for the question. Through you, Mayor, in relation to how the rescission motion could be accepted, the governance rules clearly contemplate that a rescission motion might be lodged before the minutes are published. So it is quite clearly contemplated by the governance rules that that might happen. And indeed, other rescission motions that we've received, that's happened as well. So that is what the governance rules say. And there was not really any degrees of freedom or discretion for me because the governance rules were clear that that rescission motion should be accepted. In relation to the minutes, what's proposed here in the words from the officers is that the minutes include all of the text of the debate that happened on 13th of September. So that will include the original motion that was moved and lost, the second motion that was moved, the amendment that was moved, and then the final resolution. And then under that will be a line saying, at the 18th of October council meeting, the above resolution was rescinded. So that, to me, is a complete and accurate view of what happened on the September council meeting. I note I wasn't at that meeting, but I have watched that part of the debate online. So yes, I'm satisfied, and combined with the verbal advice we've received, given the complicated governance rules situation, the verbal advice we've received from lawyers is that this is the way to go. And Councillor, I'm just not sure if you've realised if you can see what the actual wording says. It says that the minutes reinstate all recorded proceedings during the debate on item 7.1 and confirming that the decision has been rescinded. Thank you, Councillors.
So, Councillor,
Clarification, if I may, just a further clarification.
Yeah.
So just so it's clear, in essence, what we are actually doing is we're rewriting the minutes from the 13th of September based on the events of the 18th of October, tonight's meeting. In essence, that's what we're doing. I'm sorry, does any other councillor have a problem with this?
All right.
Where's the good governance?
Can I move a procedural that this item be deferred, those updates be made, and the item come back to us at the next meeting for approval?
Sorry, we don't need to defer the minutes of the meeting. It clearly says that all the proceedings from the meeting in September, that's what the minutes are reinstating, and then confirming that the decision has been rescinded as per tonight's, because if we had passed the minutes as they stood at the 13th of September, it wouldn't actually be an accurate record, because then we would have updated and rescinded the motion. So that's why that is. Councillor Pavlidis, if you want to move an amendment, go for it, and we'll see if you have a seconder. If not...
I have a procedural.
Sorry. Do you want to move? Do you want to formally move the procedural?
Yeah, I'll formally move the procedural.
All right, I'll see if you... I'll just see if you've got a seconder to move a deferral of this until the November meeting. Councillor Pavlidis to second. Can we just put that to the vote?
No, I'd like to speak, please.
All right, if you have to.
Hear reason.
Yeah, look, I'm reasonably happy with what is on there because it reinstates in the minutes the discussions and the proceedings. And I think that's fair, and I think it's appropriate that you also have a note attached to say that this is rescinded. So the motion as it stands is fine, and I think we're heading towards the appropriate path. And this is just very unusual because of the nature of the rescissions. However, when you are adopting minutes, you normally need to have the minutes in front of you and the minutes to be read so you can confirm. What this does is authorises the officer to make that decision, but approves it before that wording has been put into the minutes and in front of us. So we could easily move a motion like this and never see minutes again, never adopt minutes again. We could just say that the officers put minutes that are a true and accurate reflection of the proceedings at the last meeting. But the fact that we have them in front of us every meeting is a check. It's a check and a balance, but the wording is correct, that is exactly what happened. So you can't really say, yes, officers just do it and we've adopted the minutes. You really need to say, officers do it and bring the minutes back so we can read them, and then we'll adopt them. The path is correct. This is fine. I'm happy with this to go through. but considering it's been raised by council, I think the appropriate path is to give this direction to the officers and to bring the minutes back at the next meeting for final adoption, because at that point we get to read them, and that's what adopting the minutes are. When you're adopting the minutes, it is saying that I've read them and I confirm that they are true and accurate reflection of the meeting. This says, can officers please make the appropriate changes? But we've approved them tonight. So I think we're putting the cart before the horse in a way, if you want to be technical. I think none of this really matters. The end outcome is the same. But if you want my opinion from a process, which is what I'm recommending, is that we give this indication to officers tonight through a motion like this, but the minutes be confirmed at the next council meeting.
All right, thanks, Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Pavlidis is the seconder. Anything to add?
No, nothing further. I think it's already been said.
All right. Can we just vote on that one? Great. All right, all those in favour of deferring the confirmation of minutes to the next meeting? All those against? All right, so that's been carried, and so the minutes will be deferred until our November meeting.
Can I have a division, please?
Yeah, sure. So all those in favour were Councillor Bolton, Councillor Hart, you had your hand up, Councillor Tapanos, Councillor Davidson, Councillor Conlon, Councillor Pavlidis. All those against were Councillor Pulford, myself, and I see no hand for Councillor Riley. Okay, I see a hand now, so that's Councillor Riley also against. Okay, so we'll deal with that then. All right, item 10 is foreshadowed items. Any foreshadowed items, councillors? No. Any urgent business at item 11? No. And item 12 is confidential business. So as we've got no confidential items tonight, I just want to thank the people still in the gallery, and thank you all for being here and for your interest in our council meeting. I wish you all a good night, and I will formally declare this meeting closed at 10:45 p.m. Thanks, everyone.